Pennsylvania and even up in Maine, and of course down in Tulare, California, and other states, as our committee members went around and listened to people on that. What do you need? What do you need? They wanted solidarity in what used to be known as the food stamp program. It's a SNAP program, which I'll have you know is 82% of the spending of what's called the Farm Bill. That's why I said a minute ago when we talk about the farm part of the Farm Bill, that's a tiny percentage of the overall thing. But that's fine, you know, SNAP works pretty well. It's extremely important for lower income folks that are not going to have the ends meet. And, you know, I see it's a lot of it even in this district in Northern California. You've had your industries chased out by regulations. Timber. We used to have a thriving timber industry in several of these counties up here. And obviously you know what you have now. Yeah, you know what? On timber and forestry, the U.S. used to be the #2 importer of wood products. China was #1. Well, China's economy has downgraded here for a while, so now we're #1. Why are we #1 in importing wood products when we burn so much of it here? And there's so much out there we can still capture. And for those that say, well, these guys, you know, the big timber, all they want to do is cut down all the trees, clear cut everything, you know, from here to Oregon, which here is actually close to Oregon. When I say that speech down south, it has a little more impact, you know, but either way, we're not going to cut every tree from YREKA to Oregon or from Yuba City to Oregon. It's called selective harvest. It's called in some cases even age management, where they take a small area, 30 acres, and cut it pretty heavy in there, generally on private land, which is their blankety blank land, but still under a prescription that is required to get a permit. In California, the permit is about that thick. It takes 2 years to do because, you know, we've never heard of issuing a permit for timber harvest over. I'm sure Ray's shaking his head big time over there, but you know, most of this stuff isn't new under the sun. There's massive permits, these massive, what's called CEQA documents, California Environmental Quality. It's basically a big old permit. You got to just about do anything outside. And the federal level is called NEPA. So those are long-winded, long-term permits required that basically are used by environmental groups and others that just want to stop projects, and they use them pretty well. It can stall a lot of things. It can drive up the cost. Like say post-fire, after a big forest fire, with a lot of acres with a lot of damage. You know, what do you need to do? Well, I think everybody ideally would like to see the forest grow back, bounce back as soon as possible. And so go in, you know, on private land, generally those guys are in there salvaging what good timber might be left in the fire. It might be scorched with still good trees inside that bark, right? And making that land come back. Planting new trees the next spring, the next summer, and getting it bounced back. So why doesn't federal land look like that? It doesn't, because they're so broken down in bureaucracy that it's many, many years, if ever, a lot of times never, do they go back and replant. Instead, the brush takes over, the dead sticks are standing there, they might fall over at any time, be careful out there hiking. And it's just a drastic difference between how federal land and private land is managed that way. They do just a tiny pittance amount on the federal land. U.S. Forest Service has at its purview 193 million acres. And when the chief a couple of years ago announced an ambitious plan to manage 20 million acres for the type I'm talking about, you know, restoration and thinning and, you know, making the forest healthy on the number of trees per acre, that ratio that you need for a good healthy forest, which might be, you know, 50 to 70 adult trees per acre, is a healthy amount. You can actually see through it a little bit, right? So instead, we have situations where there's 400, 500, 800 trees per acre. And so if you have a drought period, like the western states tend to have drought periods. We're arid out here, okay? So when we don't manage the land and we don't let fire like it did many years ago on a more even out basis instead of wildfires, because there's so much material out there since it never burned until now. When you have a material per acre, the tree, even the big strong trees are struggling for that water supply in a drought situation. And so they all are weakened. A weakened tree doesn't make sap. If it doesn't make sap, insects attack it. And the insects will kill the tree. Then you see massive areas of white, gray trees. are the next tinderbox that will go up big time. Nothing survives. So why do we have to do this? Why do we have to be the #1 importer of wood when we have this supply? We should be getting after it. So the Farm Bill has some provisions in there to help make it easier to get some, it's called categorical exclusions, to do 10,000 acre blocks without such a deep level of permits. Some of these are provisions I got put into the Farm Bill that if we can pass it, it'll help us a little bit with our forestry. But when the forest chief said, we're gonna do 20 million acres out of 193 million, if you round that up, that's 200 million, it's called 2 million. So 20 million is 10% of 200 million, right? That'll be over 10 years managing that 20 million acres. So that's 2 million per year. 2 million is 1% of 200 million. So you see, that's a 100-year cycle of getting across all the forest acres in this country. We will never catch up at that rate. We need a much more aggressive plan. It doesn't mean clear cutting everything. That's not what I'm saying. We need the private sector. We need the jobs. We need to be producing the wood here in this country. Wood and paper products. Heaven knows. We waste a lot of paper in Washington, D.C. Might as well be domestic paper, right? When you see these things that come on your bill, it says, we're going green, we're going paper free. No, no, no. Ask for the paper. Those are jobs. We need to get that material out of the forest anyway. And I always like holding a piece of paper rather than having to look up something on a blankety blank phone and you can't find which email it was in or which text it was in or did I delete it or whatever. Anyway, that's just me. So those are the few things that are going to be our immediate focus. Then coming back in at the new session in the new year, again, it'll be seating the new House, new Senate, county electoral votes, seating the new president, and going forward and getting some things done. I hope by time, the presidential election is always much more acrimonious than the midterm ones because everybody understands the presidential election. So with that over with, I hope we can get focused again and get the real work done and not be posturing for politics. So with that, I don't want to keep going on and on. Let's get to your questions and comments on that. And I'm going to come up here and grab this Kubota stool. All right. And I think we need to hand out this microphone there. Do we have a protocol for the? Okay, Ray, you gonna be the mic man? Okay. No dropped mic, right? All right, thank you for that, Supervisor Haupt. And we have a hand up already. Please, people, don't be bashful. You can ask me any question. My feelings tend not to get hurt. You know, it's tough questions. So,
I know what it takes for you to get up here. I've been down to your ranch at your fundraisers, and it's always a nice event. So I appreciate you coming up, but respectfully, this is a dog and pony show.
This is what?
Dog and pony show.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Election time, you're here. We lost our dams. There's no speech of the cattlemen and the water. The two issues that we have here is number one, the ranches and the water. We can't afford to lose that. We lost the forest, we lost the mining, and now they're about ready to lose the ranches. We can't do that. And the White House is only a puppet. Like Obama, Biden, the rest of them, maybe possibly even Trump. I mean, Trump could have done a whole lot more in his 4 years that he was in there, besides the fact that he was fighting all the other stuff. If he really had the people behind him that like the military and what we should have behind our president, we could have took this country back a long time ago. But, truthfully, the White House is just a puppet. There's people running the White House, and you people are just following along the regime. We hear the same thing. I've been hearing it for 15 years, and you won't listen to the Agenda 21 program that's going on that's disrupting our country, destroying our country. I'm sorry. But
you don't have to be sorry.
I'm a Vietnam vet, and I am sick and tired of this stuff. I want some action. I want some real concrete action that's going to make us feel like we got something going on in this country. We're being destroyed. The welfare program, you talk about the SNAP program, come on. You know better. You're as old as I am. It's not gotten better in 70 years. It's gone downhill. Now we got homeless living on a hill. Doug, it's serious. We need some serious stuff going on. Some real belly, what is it? Passion. Passion. We need passion for our country, passion for our county, passion for our cities. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. And I'll take everything you said there was a positive, as a drive to, you know, because, and yeah, dog and pony show. I didn't bring a dog or pony, but someone brought a nice dog. Anyway, I shouldn't joke. But I was also confident that in my opening here, I saved the subject on the dams, which makes me very angry, and as well as farming and ranching and the water supply and the regulatory thing, and you still have an emergency water situation as by the governor over in the Scott and the Shasta and all that, and that's nonsense. I'm just as angry, but maybe I have a calm exterior. I hope that calm exterior helps me to get things done, because I only get one shot on a lot of things. My objective isn't to just be and I'm not calling you this, don't take this wrong, but a lot of guys like to go back there and get on camera and make fireworks and all that and call people out. Then they become marginalized because no one will listen to them anymore. If I'm marginalized and no one will listen to me, then I'm not effective for you, right? So.
You've said that for years. I've heard that since I've lived up here 15 years. You've been saying that. But still, we're going downhill. Kevin Kiley's done a lot more in 1 year. We've heard more from him than we have from you.
Kevin Kiley has a long list of emails he got when he ran for governor. Kevin Kiley spends a lot of time just putting out information instead of working in the trenches like this. Okay? You want to do that? All right? So just because he's always emailing and sits in his office and does, you know, that stuff all the time. Because action being on TV isn't necessarily action in the trenches, okay? I do resent that. I do resent being compared to that, because the guys that are just there being, you know, little roosters trotting around, getting TV time and getting YouTube time, getting Instagram time is not action. We came up here with Ray and his colleagues trying to figure out what can we do about FERC, which isn't doing squat to hold accountable what's happening on these dams, okay? We're going to take an action. I don't know how far to go. There's also a situation where the voters are putting these people in place in California and Sacramento, lizards like Newsom, okay? And the Democrat legislature, I'll get partisan for a minute, they have a 3-to-1 ratio down there. They get to do whatever the hell they want. They can pass whatever they want, and they're passing some crazy ass stuff, okay? Sorry, but I'm not sorry, because it makes me angry too. And so you want to get after me, that's fine, but don't compare me to guys that are just little roosters trotting around saying stuff and getting all the credit for not even showing up. Because we work our butt off in this district everywhere and show up and listen to people and try and take and make action out of that. But in the state legislature, they're outgunned. My good colleague James Gallagher from Yuba City, you know, he's a minority leader down there, and he believes in all the same stuff too. But they are overwhelmed by the voters putting in these, you said it, that don't believe in what we're talking about here. They don't believe in people mining and farming and ranching and timbering and building more reservoirs. I mean, we're having a dog of a time trying to get the Sykes Reservoir going, which has been talked about for 50 years. That would mean 1.5 million acre feet of new water supply of water just right now is just going down the river and out to the ocean. They like it that way. You know, this Delta smelt, I just saw a piece for 6 years in a row, they call it trawling. They go out and trawl looking for the Delta smelt to see what the population. 6 years in a row, they found 0. And we're still sending hundreds of thousands of acre feet out there, okay? So I'm not a flashy politician. I'm not going to come here and snow you and say, oh yeah, check out my latest Instagram. I'm doing something, you know? I mean, I put that stuff up anyway, but it's not what I spend all my time on. I have a podcast. Well, I don't even, anybody, how many listen to podcasts here? Probably some of you, right? Okay, good. Okay, about 8%. If I spend all my time on that instead of trying to negotiate or push across education of what they're doing to us up here, and I consider us, I'm right here beside you, even though I don't suffer the same as you physically. This deal with the dams, all my 12 years in Congress, we've fought against what they've been trying to do with every angle that we know. Sometimes we have reluctant neighbors that don't really feel the same level of urgency. Sometimes we have other partners that should be partners that are silent. So we've carried a lot of the load kind of ourselves, right? As far as legislative. That's okay, I don't care. I don't mind being the lone wolf if that's what it be, because this dam removal was never going to produce a good result for the people, for the hydroelectric power, for the management of water, for flood control, and certainly for the fish themselves. Like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful result here with all the silt going down the river, choking out all the life of that river for months and months. You know, some of the people involved say, well, it might take 7 years, maybe 10 years for it to bounce back the way it should. And it's just full of liars and corruption, because, you know, they say, well, there's no actual reefs there in the river there that would have prevented fish in the past to be effectively moving up. And they were, I don't know what evidence there is out there, but part of their plan that they won't talk about is blowing up the reef so it would be a system that was never even natural. And then the water they're benefiting, the run down the river, has been enhanced by the Klamath Project as it is. When they put the Lake River Dam in, that made the lake, I think, about 6 feet deeper, which is hundreds of thousands of new acre feet when they built the project, made a lot more water available. And then the other things they did with the project, that water would have been just lost into certain areas up there and never made it down the river. Now it's possible to channel down the river, and these environmentalists will call upon that to make water that never happened, never was available. Now it's all environmental water. The farmers up here suffer in the Klamath Basin because it's now all fish environmental water. They wrestle over, is it going to be the sucker fish in the lake, keep the lake deep, keep the lake shallow? Is it going to be this run here? The salmon, as we were talking about, they have like 3 divisions, 3 cohorts is the word. If 2 out of the 3 are gone, can the 3rd cohort even sustain that population of salmon in life there? So I know I gave you a long answer to that, but don't think I don't get wound up over this crap, all right? I mean, you do, sir. I know you do. Well, it's not a dog and pony, I mean it. But we're outnumbered, and in the federal level, you mentioned, I'll give a little bit more. You know, I was disappointed in the Trump era in how this was handled up here. They sent Zinke. Well, I thought, you know, he might be the guy. Then they sent this guy Mickelson up here, who just basically dogged you guys the whole time. We're good, so I can't say all my swear words, but it makes me really, really angry that this is what we got. And, you know, I think if we could have got Trump's attention a little more strongly and directly, we could have done it. So anyway, next question.
Hi, I'm Rosie Scott. Most of you know me or know of me. I'm a rancher. I was born in Siskiyou County. My mom was born in Siskiyou County. My grandmother was born in Siskiyou County. We're 147 years on the same property. I drive about 250 to 300 miles a day for my job. I drive from Levi Strauss's in McLeod through the Vistas, Edgar Beswick to the Oregon border, Teal, Patricia. I'm on Daggett, I'm on Capo Cove, I hit Happy Camp, Horse Creek, Beaver Creek, Independence Creek, Scott River, and Shasta River, which I own land on and which I have cattle on. I don't want to talk about the dam removals. It's down, it's gone, and I want to talk about the people that live around Copco, on Mountain View, on Patricia, on Teal. These people, their water system looks like my 90-year-old mom put it up with her hair dryer and a bottle of super glue. You've got a tank, you've got a 1-inch, and it leaks. They have no water. No water. The roads have been torn up. They can't get to their houses. And they have been told, which I have walked in on this twice, by vehicles. They have been threatened. They've been saying their houses are going to be eminent domain. We need help up here. And the sheriff not taking a stand, the DA not taking a stand, the Board of Supervisors, I'm sorry, I'm going to take a swing at everybody, because your KRRC is tied to your RES. If you look at their 990s, you will see the similarities of who works where. You will see the family relations. You will see the problems. You cannot get around a system that they do not want you to get around. And we need some help for these people. The fish are dead. The river looks like a mud pie. We're SOL. They're coming up the Shasta. We have the tribes in the Vistas. We have the tribes on the Sedge Nelson Ranch. We have the tribes on the Whiskey Lakes Ranch on the Shasta side. We have the tribes in the Scott side. We need some help. They're taking our water step by step. They're taking our land. They've bought 11 houses up there for less than 50% of their tax appraisal. All you gotta do is go to the courthouse and look at it. Doesn't take a brain hang at this. We need some help and we need to get something stopped. But the good news is they're running all brand new equipment, all brand new trucks, but their water trucks can't bring them clean water. They can bring them dirty water and foul the whole system, but they can't get them clean water. We need help, and we need somebody to take a stand. Hi, Beth. Have a good day.
Well, as we acknowledge that the dams are over with, and this pains me. This is, if I was to look at, I guess, my time in public service, this is my biggest defeat. I take it personally, by far. And all the things related to it. You know, the dams, of course, hydroelectric power. I mean, that's the original reason for it. Now, what's good about hydroelectric power is 24/7 availability. You can turn that on anytime and make electricity. You don't have to wait for the wind to blow, sun to come up, a bureaucracy to do this or that. You got water behind the dam, you got electricity available. And let's play this for a moment. It's CO2 free. No carbon dioxide comes from that generation like maybe it would from something you burn, or the amount of effort and equipment it takes to put up a windmill and produce all the stuff it takes to. A windmill even has oil and a motor in it that makes it go a little bit. So hydroelectric power is a beautiful thing. And now we just lost 70,000 homes worth of it because of the perception or ideal that I don't think is even real on fish passage, on fish populations. But, you know, 7-10 years from now when they acknowledge, oh, I guess we've had enough time to prove it out and it didn't prove anything, all they'll say, oh, shucks, I guess we were wrong. There's no consequence. So what do we have on our more immediate action? I think that KRRC is the shell corporation that was created to do the dirty work here when Buffett and Pacific Corp wanted out. They got their golden parachute out of this project here without a whole lot of responsibility. They took the hit on whatever the value of the dams was, but I think they made that decision. They'll make money somewhere else. So KRC was created, and it was, even FERC knew it was a phony baloney enough deal without the backing of the state of Oregon and the state of California on basically like a line of credit or finance to make sure if this didn't go right, that these two states would also come in and supplement when the money ran out. Because there's $450 million that was put up, $200 million by the ratepayers of Pacific Corp, and $250 million by the bond that would be a so-called water bond in California. And so we can't get an accounting of how much money they spent so far. We're going to demand this stuff, but these guys don't seem to be accountable to anybody. Sacramento, Newsom, those guys, they don't care. They don't want accountability. And currently the people in charge of administration in DC don't want it either. So they get away with it until such point we can sue them or a new regime in DC or a new regime in Sacramento some century would get us that accountability and answer these questions. By then, maybe they'll all be, the documents will be all burned or whatever. I don't put anything past them. So an action we can take would be immediately demanding these documents from KRC as well as FERC. Why are you redacting entire reports about what's going on with the water quality and the spending, you know, where the money's going and all that? They don't let us see it. Well, they haven't let the general public see it. When we had this meeting earlier about this, we got that as our focus. That these are things we can do immediately. We can't save the dams, obviously. You got the last coffer dams out, I think, yesterday. Unfortunately, I have to say that's passed. We can rebuild someday. Yep, maybe when this has all been proven stupid and wrong.
We can't rebuild as long as they're giving the tribes their land down the river. We're not giving them 1,200 acres in a block. You're giving them down the river. So you don't have access to the water.
Unless the tribes are interested in building the dams themselves, which I've heard that rumor, so whatever. But, so the immediate thing we can do on accountability is demanding a FERC to let me see these documents and see what's really going on with the spending and the water quality. Because there's a good couple faithful folks here that are taking their own river samples, and you know, we've all seen those jars on Facebook, right? And the temperature gauge in there showing much hotter water than what they're trying to do on the Sacramento, where they're ruining Lake Shasta with not allowing farmers to have a certain amount of water because they want to keep the lake deep, keep this cold water on the bottom so they can make the river 1 degree colder, so the fish will be happy there. So short term, we want to demand these documents because honestly, there's not a whole lot we can do right now with the regime that is in charge in DC and Sacramento to counter this. So let's get these documents out. Our FERC is supposed to be independent enough. It isn't just a puppet of an administration. But I got to tell you, when that thing was falling apart, KRRC, when their financing wasn't holding up, until those 2 states threw in with your taxpayer dollars and the backing of you and that line of credit, then FERC approved that 5-0. On that day, I knew the gate was up. When FERC said, all right, we're gonna let them do what they want to do, then there wasn't any more magic tricks, there wasn't any chants or words that was gonna stop what we see coming. So I gave it all my all for 12 years and drug a couple other legislators along with me for a while that were maybe not as passionate about it. And here we are, we lost. But I hear what you got going on with your wells. KRC needs to producing wells for you immediately. Oh, we don't have the funding. Where'd all the funding go? We don't have that permit. Then get the blankety blank permit. There needs to be the restitution of the water supply to you, Copco Road, all the other things need to be put up to where at least you have a community that can move around. Notwithstanding how much is going to slough off in the river, people whose homes are going to be flooded out or maybe sloughed off because of the changing water table like that. Those folks deserve full compensation for that. That's the quest that we would have once this thing is sorted out. And we have likely a new Congress, well, we'll have a new Congress no matter what it's formed or whatever comes out of the White House. We have the right situation there. I believe we'll have ammo to come make that case after the first of the year. If we get the same sort of thing, they don't give a rat about us up here.
Have you seen it?
See what?
Have you been up there and looking around and?
Ask your neighbor there. Yeah, we've been up several times. Aaron has my eyes and ears and legs up here many, many times. Yeah, so I'm painfully aware of what this looks like for you here, and it makes me angry and frustrated that happens to you, because you're good people here. You don't deserve to have this happen, none of you, for what government's doing from the outside, you know. And I'm saying these words, and those words can be hollow, but I really hope to take an action that will restore at least the livability of those areas in a new regime after the first of the year. That will be our quest. And then short term, as I mentioned, holding FERC accountable, like, why are these redacted? Why can't the people see what these reports are? What are you hiding here? You're not even generating power anymore. So there's no secrets, there's no proprietary information. It's all gone. You need to be accountable to this. The money needs to be accountable. This is public money, so much of it. There's a cornerstone of who we are as a country is that accountability. And, you see it at all levels, though, with the stuff they're getting away with the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento with the billions missing for this and that. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Voters, like, are you tired of this yet? Are you going to vote for people that are accountable to you, that show up and come be part of this and get a bit of a blistering there? I don't mind that, because I feel just as angry, and I would be doing the same thing if my elected comes I didn't understand what that elected is doing too. So hopefully we understand each other a little bit better after this. Go ahead.
This is a little redundant, but why and how was the dam removal allowed to happen?
The dam removal was a lot loaded in politics. I think those dams are seen as trophies to be mounted on the wall by the environmental left. I think the tribes are being manipulated to be doing part of the dirty work of the environmental left. They're not stopping there. They want to take the Snake River dams up. They won't be happy until every dam is gone. Let's say Lake Shasta, Lake Orville, let's say Grand Coulee Dam, and all of them. I mean, they're already working on the Colorado River. They think they should get rid of Lake Powell so that Lake Mead could be more effective. No, we will stand in their way and all that. And so the next domino, I'm afraid, is going to be the Snake River. And I want my Washington colleagues to be looking at this as a horrific example of what can happen here. Because that's very important in that area for agriculture and a lot of things too.
Is there any way to get CAL FIRE to put the fires out?
CAL FIRE, between them, the Forest Service is more focused on putting fires out especially in areas where there's private property that's going to be lost. And I would say that they've done a pretty darn good job this year, but I hear the anecdotes of saying, a couple nights ago, and I don't know if I should say it on a recording, but I hear that they're doing, it's the whole controversy with backfires. And this is somebody saying it to me, so I don't know. Backfire in high wind. Now, I've seen it firsthand on the Dixie Fire, where it was effective around the town of Greenville before Greenville went up later. But that at nighttime when there's no wind and you can light it here from a roadway up to a particular area and then put it out before the dawn or whenever the windy period typically starts, backfiring, intentional fire can be effective. Fire can be a very effective tool. That's partly what we're talking about with categorical exclusions on timber, but also in talking to the frustrated CDF guys that are really trying to do things, say, what would you guys really need? We legislators could work on. Is that there's a strong case to be made that this is it's an industry of itself.
Paying taxes and stuff like that are in line to have our property burned down. Because so they can make money.
I need to be able to prove these things, you know what I'm saying? And we need your anecdotes on that. So, I mean, some pretty heroic work was done on the Thompson Fire around Oroville and on the Park Fire. It started in the park near Chico and ended up being 430,000 acres. A good job was done in saving communities, portions of communities. A pretty amazing job in some cases, but how did it get there, right? How did it get so big? I can't answer that question for you right off the top of my head. The Beckworth Fire, someone gave me a piece of it, yesterday or the day before, that they thought it was basically out. Excuse me, the Dixie Fire. I said Beckworth, I was coming home from the Beckworth Fire up in the eastern counties. That's Lassen and Plumas, like around Doyle and places like that, and the town of Beckworth, of course. I was returning from that one a couple of years ago back to my home in Butte County, going down Highway 70 through the Red River Canyon. I saw the first fire going up of the Dixie Fire. There's a fire truck down in the, along 70, and one higher up, and there's supposed to be a helicopter around somewhere. It's like, okay, well, it doesn't look like much right now. It looks like they got it handled. Well, you hear there was a drone in the air, and they freaked out, and so they park all the equipment because there's a drone, and then it turns into, boom, 1,000,000-acre fire at the end of the day. And so that's where the accusations come out that I can't, verify. Yeah, that Fire NATO, yeah.
No, when it started, Park Power.
Yeah.
Forest Service was sending to Washington.
No, that's a river.
That was the one where I think a flat tire or a chain dragging on the ground caused sparks.
It started right there. They didn't put it out.
Well, yeah, I hear the stuff too about someone might be nearby with logging equipment or construction and say, hey, we'll call in and say, hey, there's a little fire. Can we run over and help you put it out real quick? And they say, do not do that. It's out there now. Now this year, my feedback was that the forest supervisor said, even though it's this precious wilderness area that's supposed to be protected from any intervention by equipment or roads or all this, no dozer lines, My understanding, the forest supervisors said, go out, put the fire out. We will, let the dozers run, let the fire trucks go, let the equipment, because they're supposed to be all done by manned crews. Like, well, it's the amount of material out there is burning, you're never gonna put it out with hand crews. You need all that. And so why not put a fire out when it's 100 acres instead of 100,000 in that precious wilderness area? People want these declarations of wilderness areas anyway. You got one kicking over here, I think in Siskiyou, they're talking about a couple of them. What does wilderness actually protect? Say, well, you can never develop on it, you can't do logging on it. Well, you have to get a permit to do logging anyway, especially on non-private lands. But you gotta do it on private lands. It's hard to get these permits. Okay, so what keeps you from putting in oil wells? Like, well, do you know how hard it is to get a permit to do oil wells even on lands that are not designated that? It's really hard. Well, development. Well, putting housing in. I mean, the city of Chico, they just shot down a nice housing project on the east side of town because they put it on the local ballot. You can't build anything without a pile of permits and many, many, many years to do so. Trump was talking about, why does it take 20 years to do a project because of permits? So wilderness areas are not needed to protect against anything because anything you would do is going to take a permit that would take forever. And maybe the thing you're doing actually is a good thing. Like take the ANWR, the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge. What is it, 3 million acres or 1.3? It's somewhere in the millions, big, big. And they want to do a 10,000 acre patch, not even on the pretty area, for oil exploration. Well, this country still runs on oil, whether you like it or not. I don't care how many Teslas there is out in the parking lot, okay? Because everything else runs on it. My tractors and combines and forester, miners, trucks going up and down the highway, and it ain't gonna be converted to electricity, especially when these idiots are pulling out the hydroelectric dams that make the electricity, and the grid is that much harder. Now, I have some solar panels at my place, which I'm in the program, right? I might be a hypocrite for doing them, but I say, heck with it, put them in, because as a farmer, it's something you can do to offset your costs. Well, we're finding out on our inspection of our solar panels that we're seeing they've been in place 11 to 13 years. We had to have a guy come out and look at some because it wasn't turning on. And we're seeing the degradation. We're seeing the numbers go out on what the solar panels put out. And some of the panels are messing up. The electric fan quit working so they can't run as hard, all this stuff. So they ain't perfect either. And so over time, the big wave of solar panels that comes in is going to be next year's, next decade's dumping ground of where all this is going to go. You've all seen the pictures of the windmills where they have to haul the blades to Utah, 150-foot long blades, and bury it. They haven't figured out how to grind up the blades and make them into another fiberglass boat or something like that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Hydroelectric is beautiful. We just lost out on that. We also need nuclear. I take part in a lot of nuclear planning and debating meetings in DC on that because I believe, these big plants, uranium is an amazing miracle mineral. The amount of energy you can get out of a ball of uranium like that can power this town, And so we need more, what's called SMRs, small modular reactors. There's a couple coming online finally in Georgia, So it's all the above on that. Yeah, there's windmills and solar panels, they can have their place, but they're only about 8% of the power generated nationally. That is not going to carry the weight. I'm all over the map on your answer, I hope. Next one.
Hi, Doug. Thank you for being here and for being in office at a time when you're outnumbered. I know you would probably be getting a lot done if you were the majority, so it's super hard. But
well, we do have this narrow majority in the U.S. House. It's the only place where we have a majority of people of my ilk anywhere, so yes.
Great. Two things. First off, with the water, could you say that the people of Siskiyou County implore that you ask for a state of emergency to help, even though it's a small population as the state goes, that this should be investigated as a state of emergency to help and figure out the water. Water is key to life, and that seems like
I know your supervisors have already asked for that declaration. The governor turned you down. Is there any update on that? Ray, is there any
Resolution on board in Tuesday, I got done to protect irrigation and to protect irrigated water facilities as part of public safety factor in place.
So
Yes, this would be different, this is people's
Supervisor
lives.
and Nancy, you're right in there on that too, is that a declaration of emergency to protect the local water supplies underground, et cetera, and keep it local and let it be used. I mean, still, in that case, there needs to be a rescission of the emergency water declaration the governor has kept on this county and over on Scott and Shasta, and maybe others I can't think of. But we need that declaration to say, yeah, these people have a problem up here because of this dam removal. Newsom runs around in this little hat that has a picture of a salmon on it, says Klamath Dam Removal. You've seen that picture, his little t-shirt and stuff? I mean, these guys, they are not interested in, but we have to make them interested if that's at all possible, okay?
Yeah, I mean, even if we're calling for our state of emergency over and over again. Like, you have to pay attention, we're a small population, and our ranches need.
It would have the most impact if your state legislators were doing that in conjunction with your county board. I can do that, but, you know, a state rep, a state group doesn't listen to a federal guy. I'll do it if you want, if you know, and I probably should. But the most effective is when the state legislators, along with your counties, are talking directly to that state entity.
I think it'd be important for the state to start hearing, because the rest of the state doesn't get to hear about what's happening, what plays out here.
No.
Because we are a small county.
No, you're an experiment for them for wolf release and
Yeah.
fish this and take water that and whatever else. It's just grizzly bear, yeah. You got massive elk populations you can't do much about, I guess, that wipe out pastures. It's just, you know, they have a, no, I can't say this.
Okay, so somebody's gonna run on that?
Pardon?
I can't do it, but somebody will work on that?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the other thing is, like, with the fires in the forest, I'd love to see the accountability, just, I'm not in there, I don't know the trenches, but I'd love to see the cost of timber opportunities lost, as well as acreage burned, and the fire resources, like a big number. Like, this is the cost of us mismanaging these forests.
And they don't like
And
to
you guys are
account.
blowing your job, like you should be fired because we've lost so much money up front and the back end of these massive fires now. And we just, I know. we
If
have to
the,
change
if the
this.
regime in the White House changes dramatically, significantly, I will be right in their ear about putting a Forest Service chief in that wants to be aggressive instead of staying out of the way of lawsuits and not, you know, keeping their head low.
Yeah, 'cause it's not just the cost of the fire, it's the cost of the potential that we had with that wood before it got burned. So.
Yep, and it affects, you know, your counties, it's just a constant battle to try and keep their head above the water fiscally anyway. And, you know, the timber receipts used to be an important part of counties for county roads and schools. And like, how are they gonna fix this road out here? They're already spending money they shouldn't have to be trying to keep Copco Road because KRC and those jackasses won't do their job and keep that maintained somewhat. I mean, you know, your counties, what was it, 20 grand a month, Ray?
20,000 a month, yes.
Your county, I mean, God bless them for trying to at least keep a modicum of a road still there so it's somewhat usable. These guys are tearing it up and they're flying up and down that road with their equipment and stuff, disrespecting the neighbors. You know, it's terrible that this is what goes on. But they don't care in Sacramento. They don't care in the federal agencies that are governed by, you know, who in the White House. They don't care. It's their political and environmental end that is their perceived reward. And as long as we're outnumbered, I mean, we just have to be louder and fight harder. And I will always do what I can. I'm on these committees to try and illustrate that and get the word out in front of the public and make it, you know, I get interviewed legitimately, not just me generating press, by a lot of different environmental or entities that are covering environmental stuff, the Epoch Times and E&E and several others that, and to me, I'm just telling the story. And what good does that do? Well, it does try to, I think, educate, bottom line, urban voters. See, this is what you're suffering from. When we had the Dixie Fire burn just under 1 million acres, that smoke plume was reaching Washington and eastern cities because it was such a powerful plume that just pushed up over and dropped. Kind of like China's plume comes over and hits our west coast with all the junk they generate. And so that makes a pretty good story. Like, they were told they had health advisories, don't go out and exercise in New York City and Washington, Philadelphia like that because of the smoke. And later on, they had the Canada fires more recently last year, whatever it was, that was doing the same thing. And so people, why is there so much smoke from a forest a gazillion miles away? Forest management would help, and that's the opportunity we're trying to take. So I asked for it to be the chairman, that was good English, wasn't it? The chairman of the subcommittee on forestry and ag, and so I represented that. And so it's a constant conversation on that.
I approached sue us.
Everybody should sue the state, yeah. You know, I mean, or the voters can change things.
Just follow up on the resolution of the emergency declaration. I think I just did ignore again. Make a smarter strategy for the county, which is probably the next step, is to petition the water board under beneficial uses to protect people as well as fish. That's actually in the law.
And Ray and Nancy, if you want us to weigh in on that federally, and again, we don't have quite the same voice when a federal entity is talking to the state, but they'll say, well, you're not one of us, get out of here. You know, so maybe similarly how we would look at a state legislator telling us what to do in Congress, you know, like turf battle, all that, but whatever. But, you know, I try and take that serious when, you know, the locals are telling us, whether it's county, state rep, there must be an issue there, right? And I would hope that our voice would have, you know, because we can always work to cut off funding and stuff like that too, so, and do other things to make it not quite as comfortable for them. Go ahead.
Mr. LaMalfa, given the recent Supreme Court ruling back in June, Grants Pass v. Johnson, I was curious to see how you see that affecting California in particular. One.
I didn't understand you very well. The court ruling on what?
Grants Pass v. Johnson, sir.
Oh, yeah, Grants Pass, which is, yeah. Boy, a great example of that is Chico, California, on the homeless that they've been trying to deal with. And they've had a judge and a court telling them you can't do much to move around the homeless or do things that clean up your town. You should have seen, maybe there's photos somewhere in the Chico paper, the Chico City Council chambers, I mean, the capital of the town, right, had people camping with tents right on the front steps of the council chamber. Now, generally in our society, you look at the place of leadership as kind of, if not quite hallowed, certainly a place of respect, right? Our U.S. Capitol, you know, when you're watching a movie or something like some kind of movie of intrigue or whatever, then frequently they cut to the U.S. Capitol with the helicopter shot. By showing that picture, it means to you like, oh, they're going to the big place. They're going there where the authority is vested by the people in a government, and that has power, it has weight. And so if the U.S. Capitol has covered a bunch of homeless stuff, how credible is that? Then our state capitol, the same thing. The state capitol is a beautiful place. It signifies kind of the might of the people of California, not the government, the people of California and its economy and its opportunity. So it should be the same with the city council chamber or the county's board of supervisors chamber, right? And so in Chico, they had this disgusting display where they weren't able, they felt, because of the judge's ruling, to move people camping out and doing all the nasty stuff that goes with that right in front of the front door of the city council chambers. So that decision by Grants Pass, by the court, has given them back their power they should have had to begin with to manage homeless and campers and derelicts or whatever in a way that would be in accord with the town's values. And most of the people of the town would say, look, there's programs we can do to help the people that want to be helped. There's different categories of people that are homeless too, right? There's those that are probably temporarily because of an economic problem. They might be living in their car, something bad happened with their job, or maybe a breakup in the marriage, or maybe you have a woman living in her car. It's terrible. But those are folks that when you get to them, you can find a way to help them get connected and get a way out of that, okay? And they will find their way, or we will help them find their way. That's why we have these programs. That's why maybe SNAP is part of that, right? So that's one category. Then you have folks that are just flat mentally disabled or unable to do that. There's a different category. We have to find ways to help them, not have them be on the street. You have veterans that are on the street. With all we have with the VA, the amount of money that runs through that place, the size of that bureaucracy, we shouldn't have any homeless veterans out there. We had some excellent programs in the state here called, the veteran stand down. Shasta has one, Plumas has a fledgling one, went to one down in Yuba Sutter here just a few days ago. Veterans coming out of the woodwork to get dental care. That's an amazing thing. When I first saw they got dental care, this might be the only dental work they get for a year due to whatever the condition is. So the stand down is a good patch to get by, but that needs to be better as well. But then the other category I've noticed, when our church, for example, went to one of those downtown parks in Chico on a Sunday and took food, took bag, kind of like bag lunches with some pretty nice food in there and stuff, to go right into that park in downtown Chico and help some folks, but also sit down and talk to them, minister a little bit, have a little fellowship with them. Well, a good part of them were fairly young people, especially in nice weather, that they're just living off the land. They're just living off the programs. And they say, thank you for the food, and they might listen to you, and then boom, off they go. It's a big laugh, it's a big hoot for them. So folks like that are able-bodied, and that's what we tried to focus in the SNAP program, was that able-bodied single males that don't have dependents at home, you get a certain amount of time on it, then you're off. You need to be in a job situation. Able-bodied, able to work, and no one's depending on you, right? So, that's what we try to go with that. But getting back to the decision, it'll give the cities the tools they need to manage as the values of the city and that council that is elected will do. So it's very important to make Chico been able to help take care of their problem dramatically. They don't have the tents on the city council steps anymore. And this place out by the airport, they just seeded this, 2-acre piece of land for about a year and a half. It's just this unbelievable. They put a fence around and said, have at it, but they need to be able to manage that. And the people that need certain types of help, we want to get that help, but also the ones that need to be accountable, that are just living off the fat of the land, need to be able to be a productive part of society. Okay, does that work? Thank you.
Got Jim Leach.
Hey, I'm Jim Leach, live on the Klamath River. And for those of you
Part of the leeches that post a lot on Facebook with
the jar, my wife takes care of the jars. Okay.
Hold the mic a little closer, please.
I brought this because this is, I don't know how many people have social media, but this is the Klamath River today.
Can I have that, sir?
Sure.
So you do post the mason jars on, yeah,
Yes,
okay, good for you, thank you. I think I just read it today.
Yeah, we just posted one, I think yesterday, that showed up. All
This
over.
looks like that healthy stuff my wife mixes up for me for breakfast.
Yeah, maybe we can sell it, right?
But I certainly will try, yeah. Not to joke, but this is deplorable, and I've been following that page and just looking at, the temperature's been 70 and above, and what they're trying to do in Sacramento River, don't quote me, but I think they hope to get the river temperature in Sacramento by keeping the water in the lake and not allowing several 100,000 acre feet to go to agriculture, to lower the degree by 1 degree. I think from, let's say, I'm going to pull a number out of there, I think from 56 to 55, they think is going to be the ideal temperature for salmon in October or September, farther down the Sacramento. That's right in my backyard, and I just, and so we're 15 degrees higher. That's a blankety blank joke, nothing. This is what they're giving us. It's not based on any science. It's been just a big runaway roller coaster of a political effort on the removal of these dams and keep that domino effect going on more and more dams. PG&E is surrendering on a whole bunch of dams all over Northern California, little ones here and there, one down in Mendocino County. It's going to be very important for agriculture down there. But see, for them, it's not generating much electricity anymore because of conditions and stuff. So it doesn't have the value, but no one else can come in and buy the dam and keep it for what it provides for a little bit of flood. You want this back?
No,
Well, I'll give it to you later, but let's keep that up there as Exhibit A.
but you did see the samples that we were posting 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and how clear the water looked, or just 3 days ago, the water in the mason jar looked really clear.
Yeah, it was fairly clear there.
Until this came.
Yeah.
Well, even that water, we're trying to irrigate out of it, and it plugs the whole system up. Up at the Thalio Ranch, where he's pumping, and they put in a big filter system that plugs up every time he tries to run it. Now his 8-inch irrigation pipes are 3/4 full of silt. And there's no way anybody could ever pump this type of water. And that's
No, and they shouldn't have to. You don't want that kind of water. My understanding too is that, straighten me out if I'm wrong, but the city of YREKA, I think, was told they were gonna get, I'm gonna mess up the facts here, but one entity that they were gonna get the water trucked to them or supplied, they said, go ahead and turn your pumps back on, and they filled up the filter in half a day. Was that city of YREKA water? Collier, okay, thank you. And so, all right, that's, the joke's on them, right? It ain't funny, but obviously we still see we have a problem. To the question earlier, we need KRC or FERC or both, or the states, Oregon and California, to come in and make right on the water supply, whether it's new wells or some other magic, as well as the roads need to be brought back up to what they were beforehand, before this was all taken from them.
Yes, and the problem is gonna be that every time we have a heavy winter and a heavy rain, that it's gonna be like that again, probably for the next 15, 20 years. So it's not a problem that's just gonna go away next year.
No, but the KRC will go away in a few months and
Oh, yeah.
from their office, and I'm told Berkeley or wherever it is down there. And
They're pretty much
then
already.
the county will be left holding the bag. So don't get mad at your county when they have to try and figure it out, because these guys from out of town came in and did this to them. And they're straddling a lot of things, with trying to keep the sheriff's office, that's one of the primary things, keep your roads going, and the other services the state foists upon them, like mental health, like that's a state deal. It's every supervisor I ever talked to, it's just a nightmare for them, but anyway.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thanks for what you're doing on putting information out in front of us. It's helpful to guys like me. Okay. You all care if I take this jacket off? Have I impressed you with my jacket yet? Okay. I'm all right. It's warm.
Mr. Malta?
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tammy Schumacher, and I'm a relative newbie around here. I've only lived here for about 30 years.
Oh, have they accepted you? Have they accepted you in the community yet, here?
Well, I no longer live in the Marlette's house. I have voted for you every time I've had the opportunity, and I have never, and I don't regret it a bit. But I'm starting to feel like, what's the point? None of this is new. This isn't our first fire. This isn't our first flood. This isn't our first garbage. This isn't our first homeless. And we've been fighting it and fighting it. And is there any point? Do we have no hope at all unless we get a different president? I mean, I'm just feeling really hopeless here. I don't see an end. And my whole thing boils down to 2 words: participation trophies. Think about it.
Well, hey, this is what our opponents want us to feel like, but it's hard. They want us to give up and say it's hopeless, after this damn thing. I mean, I went into my own, not clinical depression, but pretty bummed out, pretty angry, pretty disgusted, and the way things are going, I'm gonna bum you out of it. I don't see an end in sight in the state of California with the way this nonsense goes. Well, the first thing you do is you vote. You vote in a way that is informed. You know what the propositions are, you know what the people are, you know what all this stuff. I always have trouble figuring out what to do on the judges. No one knows what the judges are, except for local here. But you gotta also urge your cousins and colleagues and friends and whatever in the urban areas that keep voting this stuff in that is hurting us to say, would you look at things just a little bit different? And understand this is actually costing you, and the cost of energy, electricity, fuel, food, the electricity that comes down the power lines from Pitt River and Feather River down to the Bay Area and gives them low-cost hydroelectric CO2-free power because they love CO2. Did I talk about CO2 yet? I didn't, did I? All right, so CO2, carbon dioxide is supposed to be the end of the world. It's the, folks saying it's going to be the biggest existential threat. Not China, not nuclear weapons, not any of this stuff. It's CO2. I'd love to ask the groups, what percent of the atmosphere do you think is CO2? Because when these guys come to run us in our committees, transportation or whatever, so we have to do something about CO2. We need electric trucks, and electric cars, and electric stoves, and electric leaf blowers, and electric. I still haven't figured out how a generator you would need for your house when the power goes off. What is that going to be powered on? They'll say batteries. Okay, what batteries made out of? A lot of them is lithium that explodes and all that stuff. So we're going to have these giant battery arrays for everything? It doesn't add up. So that all said, why does everything have to cost so much? This is what we should be getting out of, this is what we should be getting the public that votes to really start thinking about much more than they ever have. The crime wave. It's been set off by Prop 47, as I mentioned, plus Prop 57, plus a bill called AB 109 in our own state. And these lenient judges, these lenient DAs that can't wait to let people out that have done these crimes. They're doing it in these urban areas, in large cities. You got to replace these folks. You can't let George Soros keep electing all the DAs. The guy's smart because he picked what can I do to cause the most mayhem. He isn't trying to spend $50 million to get a U.S. senator elected. He's dropping down to this level where a couple $100,000 gets you a DA elected in an urban area that causes mayhem, right? So it comes back to voters, but that's just one day, right? Election day every 2 years, well, plus the primary, so 2 times. And you have an opportunity with referendums and initiatives. But you got to be in between that. You got to be communicating with other people about how this is affecting you. And they'll say, well, they're going to cut down all the trees up there, Well, they're not. Well, they're going to foul up all the streams if they have this mining and stuff. Well, where do you want the lithium to come from? Where do you want copper to come from to make all these electronics, all this gadgetry that you think is saving yourself so much time, with your iPhones and all this other stuff? Where's that going to come from? We can't hardly build a copper mine in this country, so we're going to import it all? Well, what happens when the other countries realize they have enough leverage to charge whatever they want for copper, and the cost of everything you have goes up, or they decide to quit sending us copper or other elements, or China, where we get 90% of our pharmaceuticals? What if they cut that off? Man, as drugged up as we are as a nation these days, as much as we depend on all these things, I'm getting over the line here again, but as much as we depend on this stuff, and if they just shut that spigot off right now, how much would people have a meltdown over some obviously very important things, okay? And some maybe snake oil too, but nonetheless, they could get us bad by cutting us off. We need to have the jobs in this country. We need to have the production in this country. We need to have the electricity come to this country. We need to have the copper and all this other stuff come from this country so we can be and our food, that's why the Farm Bill, all that stuff needs to happen here. And when we did that successfully 50, 60, 70 years ago, and our military was as strong as ever, we came out of World War II in the 50s, man, that was a golden era for this country, right? Into the 60s until all the protests and hippie stuff started happening, and then we forgot our way, building upon that. Now they're the ones in charge of most of it. So I don't know if that helped you, but hey, ma'am, I feel hopeless sometimes too. I laying there in bed at midnight in DC, the air conditioner isn't keeping up the humidity, and I just got my butt kicked in a committee or something like that, and flying back and forth. I got 2 million airline miles. Is this worth it? Well, my name's on the ballot for 2 more years if you'll have me around or not. That's not an ask. I can't campaign here, but to me, the battle is worth it. Okay, so to you, the what?
Kool-Aid IVs.
Fake IDs or not?
Kool-Aid, they're IVs into their arm.
Oh, IVs, I said IDs. Kool-Aid IVs, yeah, drinking the Kool-Aid. Well, the legislators, the ones that get elected are smart. They already know what they want to do. It's the voters that vote them in that are buying the Kool-Aid, right? there's really not a whole lot of really big dummies that get elected. I mean, there's some examples there, but by and large, you have to be able to do certain things to get elected, especially the higher level you go, because you got more people looking at you. But certain districts, they don't care about that. They just put people in because of their color or their gender, or they got a couple magic words or this or that. So, but you can't give up. What else are we going to do? Just sit home and pout? Sit home like, oh, okay, I'd rather be in the fight, no matter what, at some level or another. Even when I can hardly walk around anymore, I'm still going to be raising heck somewhere. We were talking about retirement earlier today. I don't want to retire from anything. I want to keep going at this as long as it seems like the right thing to do, but also farming. I mean, the smell of soil turning over in the spring, you can't back away from that, So I just assume standing up doing something than being retired. I mean, how many cruise ships and golf rounds can you do?
Finish your CO2.
CO2?
Yeah, finish that when you start.
Oh, CO2? Oh, right, I got distracted from that. Thank you, man. CO2, all right. There's so much. I just have conversations. I'm not up here town halling very good. But so CO2, when you ask people what percent of the atmosphere is CO2, and it's been hyped so much by the press, by the federal agencies, by politicians and all that, you think it would be the end of the world. That's what they're trying to preach. It's existential. John Kerry running around in his big jet by himself. And all those jets landing in Davos or Switzerland or wherever to say, we got to have a conference on CO2. What hypocrisy. So when I ask people to say, what do you think it is? The atmosphere is made up of oxygen, nitrogen, all this stuff. What do you think the CO2 is? Say, 20%, 50%, as high as 70%? No. Catch this. It's 0.04%. So think of it. 4%. It's 100 times less than 4%. 0.4, that's half of 1%, basically. It's a tenth of that. 0.04% is what we're taking our economy, our way of life, our country's security, and turning its head on its head for, in order to make politicians more powerful and other interests around the world that don't like us. The European oligarchy. Folks like that. China, they're laughing at us. Oh, we're all in the Paris Accord. China pretends to be, we're going to lower our CO2 starting in 2035. In the meantime, we're building another coal-fired power plant about every 2 weeks or so. And the rest of the Pacific Rim, where so much of our jobs and production is being exported to. Now, if we're making it here, we're making it under our super tight regulations, where nothing gets out of the power plant, right? Nothing gets out of that factory. Should we rather make it here? So A, we're controlling our production and what the supply we need of things. So we're employing our people. So we're doing it with, at least fair labor laws and fair environment. I think the environmental laws have gone too far, but let's at least have fair ones and stuff like that. But wouldn't it make a heck of a lot more sense to do it here instead of having unemployed people here and having people that might be homeless that are the unemployed ones, and the money that we generate won't have to have our supervisors deciding, are we going to have to go ask for more money some way or the other, so that, I could go on and on. So there's the CO2. What number did you think it was? Just guess.
I already knew it.
You've seen the tape, huh? Okay. All right. How many people thought it was 50%? No one's going to say no. Never mind. I won't do that. But that's just normal answers by normal people that are trying to do their own stuff. Like, it's up to us maybe to figure that out for you or regulate that. But do not buy into this climate change being all tied with CO2 generated by my mom's hairspray or by your pickup. There's a whole lot more going on to that. For example, the North Pole has shifted its magnetism several degrees. So the old compass used to point that way, now it point that way, right? What's that do? I don't know. The Earth, its revolution has a little wobble to it. Does that change something? I don't know. Do the scientists? No. The science is settled. It's all because of my mom's hairspray. Nonsense. And does climate change on its own anyway? Wow. It might just do that anyhow. So the U.S. is going to do it all by itself, plus the other enlightened Western European countries? We're going to just do that all by ourselves while we import everything from China? rainforest, I could go on. I mean, what's another question or thought?
Hi Doug, right here.
Okay, great.
So, thank you guys for speaking up on behalf of HALLL. I really appreciate it. It's been a really hard week.
Just one little louder.
This has been a really hard week since Sunday. We've had people out of water. Monday, we had another well lost. I've been dealing with reporters, and every time it's very hard because we spend, hours. I spent 2 hours with the guy from VOA on Monday to maybe get 30 seconds in some sort of news release. And I was just in the middle of trying to figure out what was going on with the water on Sunday when a New York Times reporter called. So I take a writing class today. This is what I wrote. If you don't mind, I'd like to read it. I think the main focus to win is to treat others the way you want to be treated. And yet my pain comes from witnessing the disregard for others who've done nothing wrong and are being impacted by those who are supposed to look out for them. What recourse does Susan have now in her retirement after being a single mom her entire children's lives, working full-time for the hospital, and now stuck without water for who knows how long? The project is coming to a close by October. Contractors will leave and close up shop and move on to the next dam removal project. And residents at the last one will still be trying to figure out what to do, like what residents at Condit and Elwha have had to go through. So Miss Tiff, another single mom, and her 2 girls, one a sophomore and one still in elementary school, has to go without water in her home and care for Anne, who is 87, and Crystal, who is disabled. Tiff drives the bus for the school, then does lawns, then goes back to the school for the after-school safe program, takes care of the littles there, her horses, 7 dogs, several cats and chickens, and shares the well with the house next door, which is a household of 7 to 8 people, 5 of which are kids under 10 years old. Evan and Heather are in a recovery program and have 2 little girls they've adopted that are 2 and 4. They are one of the families on the community well system that ran out of water. Try changing diapers when you have no water. For the world's largest dam removal project, bringing history to the forefront, the amount of disingenuous happenings are also occurring. $5,000 to replace a well, $17,000 if you need to be relocated someplace else because your home is now unstable. That's $22,000 to replace the water and the home you just had in January. That's the mitigation offered, and you either signed off before you ever knew what the impacts would be, or you got nothing. I effing hate when people who have worked hard their entire careers to be taken advantage of, and those that are still working their asses off are treated so disrespectfully and ignored with no recourse. Sorry, Gib, you worked for your entire career for CAL FIRE, saving how many homes, lives, people, and animals, and now you can't, and now you have your home for sale that you may not be able to sell because you don't have water, and your house may fall down the cliff. Sorry, you went to Vietnam and then raised 5 kids and umpteen number of young firefighters, but now your life works mean nothing. Sorry. Sorry, everyone. Your county tried. Sorry, you're just not important enough. And it's too political. Even though you fought for your country, your life doesn't matter. I know you guys have a plan. You want transparency from FERC. Well, Chairman Glick, who made that decision for FERC, used to work for and was the the lawyer for Berkshire Hathaway Pacific Corp, and made this thing happen for Warren Buffett so he could get out of his liability and put it onto us. Where's the inquiry in that? I know you want transparency, redacted documents, great. We asked for a state of emergency, we were denied. For the people at Copco that have zero water now, Ms. Tiff can't get water delivered because technically they still have water, even though they don't have enough pressure to take showers.
How do they have water? Who's
Sean from McMillan came out and they tested, and there was a little bit of water that came out, so that signified that they had water. But these people,
So something is pressuring the system so the bit comes out of it?
they have sediment in their water. Sometimes they have
Ask
water.
McMillan if he would drink or use that water.
Well, we asked McMillan to come out, we asked Sean from McMillan to come out on Sunday, because they had, actually on Monday, because Sunday they had just delivered 1,000 gallons of water, and by 10 o'clock in the morning it was gone. So there was a leak somewhere. But it was up, but it was up to local residents on their own to track down the leaks, find the leaks, which took a day, and then it took them their own labor to fix it. They asked McMillan, hey, you guys got a backhoe? And they said, well, don't you guys have a backhoe down there on Edgar Beswick? Well, yeah, again, it belongs to a private citizen. So when Rosie said we need help, we don't just need help, because we need somebody to fix this for us. The KRC's gonna leave. We already know that. They told us from day one. They're just here to take the dams out. Once the dams are gone, they're out of here. McMillan and Kiewit, they're in conflict with each other all the time. I heard from Chelsea Murphy and Elizabeth on Wednesday, well, they're talking and they're trying to get this to FERC so that they can, get this next level of paperwork done. And I'm saying, we can't, paperwork is not gonna help us. These agencies are gonna be leaving. We're still gonna be out of water, and in a couple months, it's gonna start freezing. So it doesn't matter how much water you have delivered from YREKA, which the water actually used to be coming from Costella, because that seemed cost effective. Like you're gonna spend that kind of money trucking water in from Costella instead of just getting these people a well. And now apparently they have KRRC has bought a well that was up on the end of Patricia. There was no structures or anything on it. They bought this property supposedly for like $75,000. I don't have this verified. This is just what I've been being told. We don't know who's gonna own that well. We don't know if it's gonna go to the people that it belongs to.
Can you find something on that and get that to us on that well, if that's possible?
Yeah, I'm trying,
Or if
but
the
again,
supervisors know anything about that?
they know because I'm trying to tell them, but again, it falls to us who are not paid to do the legwork, to try and raise these issues. We've done everything right, we've done nothing wrong, we vote, we communicate, and yet we keep getting pushed down the line, and in a couple of months, these people are gonna be out of water again because it's gonna be frozen. And it's not like it's an inconvenience. It's like when you've got a dirty diaper and you can't just defer. The McMillan offered Susan, well, I can get you a tank, I'm not sure when, but I've got five gallons on me right now. I mean, she laughed at him. He ended up bringing her 10 gallons. This is what I mean, it's a state of emergency.
Absolutely, and KRC and FERC are the entities that need to be providing.
But who's gonna hold them accountable? Who's gonna lose a job? Who's gonna come out and actually get these people to well? Like, what is the action? Sure, you can go through a process, but these people are out of water now. Like, you know, and you say, well, you've had 20 years to prepare. Well, you can't super.
Who's had the 20, the KRC and all those guys, or you, or the folks?
I'm saying the crap that we take on Facebook. I've been called racist. I've been called conspiracy theorist. I've been called misinformation and disinformation. And all I have been is honest and transparent about all of these issues that were raised with FERC beforehand. I know because I wrote the letters. So, like this process, who reads those letters? Is it some staffer who decides to cherry pick what gets brought to the chairman? You know, where's the oversight? Who's gonna lose a job? How are these things gonna get paid for? When are these people gonna get their water? That's what I wanna know.
And I don't have a great answer for you because these people are unaccountable and they are not, you know, I mean, what we were talking about, I can try to lean on FERC to say, what are the answers here? You're not just the redacted documents, but everything else. You permitted this thing, look at the debacle you have here now. KRC is supposed to be a responsible party as well. It was created by the two states. The two states ought to be holding them accountable.
Who's holding them to their good neighbor policy? Susan unfortunately signed off on the $5,000 because she didn't think she was gonna have a problem. And now she does. So she's hoping that they're gonna be good neighbors and they're gonna make it right. Legally, maybe they don't have to. That is what I'm talking about. These people that have worked hard their entire lives, they're looking at the last chapters of their life, and now they're stuck. They can't sell their home because it doesn't have water. They can't live there because they're totally dependent and reliant on somebody else to bring them drinking water. This is not okay. This is 2024 in America, in California, and people do not have drinking water.
That had it, that used to have it, yes. It's deplorable. Even the state water regulators that are trying to ratchet down water use by everybody on a per person per day basis, their target number, which is way too low from a normally functioning household, is 42 gallons per person per day. And so of course it's laughable when somebody says, well, I got 5 gallons for you, or 10. You know, I mean, every time there's a disaster, you see pallets and pallets delivered of watered bottles. You know, those plastic bottles are wrapped by massive more plastic. And that you know, when you look at that, about 40% of that pallet is air in between everything. So that's not gonna fix it either. You need a water supply that's reliable. And so I'd like to hear about what that well is that the,
Have you met Susan? She was at the meeting when we came to Costco. She was our fire board president. She just resigned. She just resigned. We just got our fire board together. We're just getting our fire department back together. And she resigned because she just doesn't have the bandwidth to deal with the fact that now she doesn't have any water. She doesn't have the energy to continue to volunteer for her community.
let us move on FERC in here in the short term. I know that doesn't get you a well, but I would like to know about the well that they, KRC claims to have bought, right? And see what that is in the short, if that's a partially short-term solution to some water, but that's still a trucking situation because the well isn't going to feed your system in your, right?
We serve those homes down in Patricia, the 11 homes that community well, because it's up above and it was gravity fed, and maybe they'll have more pressure. I don't know.
So that section can be all right, and then hopefully maybe
But the other homes,
you can put an outlet there and truck from Patricia to other areas perhaps, huh?
but the other homes.
Which ain't good.
are not on that system,
No.
and we don't know what will happen to them. or all private wells?
Yeah, a bad plan, a bad plan. I'm sorry I don't have a magic wand on that right now, but help us find out about that piece and see, because that, anything you do is gonna take time. That's a bad answer, I know. Let's say they could expedite a permit and find a well driller and come out and start with drilling next Tuesday. And what would it take for all that infrastructure to get in place? I mean, I guess you're, pardon?
What's it gonna cost her? I mean, these people are on fixed incomes.
It needs to be provided by FERC and or KRRC.
How do you make that happen?
We gotta get a handle on who the KRRC.
I have sent email after email for the last several years, I've never got a response back, ever. Never. Actually, I take that back. The response that I got back from the galleries was, give me more money, I'm fighting all these people here, if you give me more money, I might stand a chance. That's what I got.
Thank you, and we were with you, we understand your heartfelt, real issue, and there's no, hey Bella, would you do me a tiny favor? Would everybody mind if we open these doors on the side here? Is that outside air? Eric, is that okay?
Yes, it is, yes.
Okay, if that's outside air, let's get some outside air.
Football is probably done.
Open?
Yeah.
Thank you. Bella's our newest hire from Reading there. She's out from DC with us there, so she's taking in how this goes. Thank you, Matt. And on the east side too, please, if it's possible. Thank you. There's no kick downs, huh? Maybe you can use that barrel. Thank you. You're on TV. The immediate actions we can do are that, and I'm sorry there's not a faster one. The KRC had many years they could have been figuring something out, and all the people behind this, and when it finally comes down to looking in the pot of what's there, they don't have solutions. And that's the thing. I'll just say this. No, because there's people in those administrations that care what happens. And frequently, I think this is a glaring example of what government tries to promise, government cannot deliver. When you give it too much to do, it can't do it. Take a disaster situation. We had multiple disasters. Let's say a big earthquake in Southern California, a massive fire flood of this, that, and some hurricanes. There's not enough National Guard and national resources to go do everything. I don't know why I'm telling you this other than we have to plan our own systems and our own readiness and not think government's going to come in, because you see the incompetence of government at all levels, not every level. Your locals are trying very hard. But, they're hamstrung by Sacramento in so many cases, and it's
Supposed to be our,
Representative Republicans.
we can only do so much.
No, I know, but we can only do so much too, because constitutionally we have separation of powers. I'm not trying to make excuses. That's the last thing you want to hear, I get it. But the whole system needs to be people focused on helping the American people. America first. I just saw a big pickup driving through town. America first on the back window. It's a big F-250, I think. And that's what it should be. And it doesn't appear to be. It seems to be other things first.
This is a public safety issue.
You're right. We need that emergency declaration. Let's pound the governor's office for that declaration. Let's pound FERC for it and see what we can get to flip right away. Let's do that Tuesday, okay?
Doug, what role would DWR play in that?
Department of Water Resources, the state level?
Sure, because they have water rights, agencies that are within, State Water Resources Control Board.
Yeah, the control board, yeah.
Right, there's water right agencies, I had a long conversation providing, so when they dip into our ponds, for example, on our ranches, all of our ranches in Wichita, that until recently, most people, yeah, that's what happens. But and what I was told by State Water Resources Control Board is, in an emergency.
Why don't you let her have the mic then? Maybe that would be helpful. Is that okay? Just jumping out of tournament.
So in an emergency, like wildfire, according to State Water Resources Control Board, public health and safety takes a priority over everything.
Mhm.
So, and water is at the top, obviously, because you can't live without water, period. So I would think that maybe there could be an avenue through the State Water Resources Control Board, since they are about controlling water in California, and I think to me, just looking at the way that organization, that agency is set up, that they would have an interest in the health and well-being.
As well as the water quality people for this debacle of the water that's going down the river and what it's doing, they seem to be only worried about wildlife. They don't worry about human, livestock. Yeah, so I think there could be an angle with that if they're willing to listen, but if they're just carrying out the whims of the lizard man down there, then I don't know. So, but that's where you could have, the state legislators would actually have the ear of that entity. We can try from the federal level, but I think you present a pretty good angle. Let's go back, Grace.
Thank you very much for coming up and listening to us. As you can tell, a lot of us are really flustered, disappointed, irritated, and feel deceived, and just in general, our mental health is not good. I have three things. One, when you were doing your introduction, you said federal land. Do not say that again. It is public land managed by the Forest Service.
I messed up.
The other
You're right. I believe that too. I fell into pattern.
The other thing that needs to be added to your agricultural bill is mills. Siskiyou County used to have 22 mills scattered throughout the county. We have 2 now. If we get all of this wood coming from the fires, there's no place to take it. It's just destroyed and it's just there. So we need mills to process those things. Everybody forgets about that. What are you going to do with all this burnt wood? Well, we've got to have a mill to process it in.
We do talk about that, Grace, because there needs to be a place, as you say, for it to go. And we had a field hearing for the forestry subcommittee in South Dakota, a town called Spearfish, where the Ryman family have a mill there. That Forest Service was not putting out the board feet, or it wasn't projected they'd put out the board feet to sustain that mill for a year. They need about 120 million board feet, or some new fancy term for board feet now. I don't know what it is, but it's anyway. You don't know either. Good, thank you. We have a whiteboard of bad words in my office we don't use in our press either, so whatever the new one would be. Anyway, huh? Yeah, I don't want to know. So, we get that public land, federally non-managed land, if we're going to get someone to put, $150 million up to put up a good-sized mill and invest in that, then there needs to be at least a 30-year commitment that the wood is going to flow.
Right.
I think a mill is going to want to be paid back over a 30-year period, maybe 40. Who knows? It should be there in perpetuity, because these trees are always going to grow. And they're growing more board feet by far than we're harvesting, unless we count burning it as harvesting, which Forest Service kind of chalks up burned land as treated land. And that's an
Yeah,
insult to
right,
everybody.
right.
So absolutely, and this is for the conversation we're trying to have. Are we getting anywhere? I won't say we're getting anywhere very fast, but we need to have a commitment that the wood will continue, whether the whim of a new administration comes along. Is there a water bottle around here, Aaron? Anything like that? Oh, is there? Oh, beautiful. Yeah, yeah. I get you. I get you. Yeah. So how much you give me to drink?
You get sick.
Anyway.
I have one more thing that I need
It
to,
is part of the conversation, how far it goes, but it really boils down to getting the Forest Service to be responsive of putting these things in place, say, forget the lawsuits, damn the torpedoes, all that stuff. We
Right.
need to have commitments of the wood coming out of that public land, as well as the private will do it too. But, when you burn half of the private land because of these fires too, the Forest Service land is going to have to be a bigger role. Thank you. Go ahead with your third
okay.
one.
Then I have this other thing. There's been a company from Australia that has come and purchased the fruit growers' property, and they have locked up all of the roads in Siskiyou County. And it's really, really frustrating when your mental health is really bad and you want to take a ride and go up on the mountain and you get someplace and there's a locked gate across it. There's public land also on the other side of the gate, and you can't get to the public land because some foreign company has come in and bought the land and locked it all up. So it's really, really frustrating. It's really irritating. You can't go cut wood where you've always cut wood. You can't go hunting where you've always gone hunting. You can't go fishing where you've always gone fishing. And it's frustrating with all of the other things that are going on in Siskiyou County to have your life restricted from going into the mountains where you feel calm and cool, and it's something special that we've all loved to do. So that's my other thing. It's foreign countries, foreign corporations coming in and buying land in the United States, locking us out.
Yeah, we're seeing that too with a lot of ag land too. I just saw a report on it today, but how close in proximity that Chinese interests are buying available farmland right next to important bases and stuff. And we can't be naive on this stuff anymore. As far as, any foreign ownership at all, I don't know how we completely stop that and still have what we claim is free enterprise. But we shouldn't have our enemies having this free shot at us here. So thank you for that water. I don't worry about the cooties too much, except for, did everybody get over the flu around here? Okay. Aaron, yeah? All right, I'm going to do it.
So, Doug, thank you for being here. Take a drink of water, will you please? I don't want to see you melt there, so have a drink. So I have a couple of things. The first thing is to express, in conjunction with what you've heard from people along Copco and downriver on the Klamath River, the damages that have been done and are yet to be done as we approach this next season. That I think one of the most damning things here is that KRRC, with FERC's approval, obviously, because they answer to them, is refusing to deal with our own public officials. And there's many issues that are connected with public notice and so on that they're avoiding because they've decided they don't want to deal with the public. I think that's something you can do back in Washington with FERC, is go over and talk to them about what is happening with KRC and how much control they have. And you can talk to Ray and others about that. The next thing I wanted to mention, you were looking for a number. Newsom just came out last week with a number, first time I ever saw it. $800,000 he claims the state has spent to take these dams out. I mean, 800 million.
800 for what purpose?
To take the dams out. He says 800 million they've spent as a project.
800 million is
That
what's
was the
spent.
number that was in the paper.
What paper?
That was, well, I should say, when I think of paper now, I think of on the internet.
Yeah,
It was
all
on
right.
the internet.
You
yeah.
send us that piece because
Yeah.
we've been, I mean, they had a $450 million nut they could spend, right? And miraculously, when KRC was presenting their case to FEMA, however long ago, a year and a half, they said, yeah, we've got it all figured out. They had their little minions in the room doing the numbers. It's going to come out to 425 or 30 million. They'll just have just a little bit left over. Wasn't that funny how that number came out just right with what they had budgeted with a little fudge factor there?
Well, I think if anybody dug into it very far, they would find the numbers in the billions of dollars when you add in all the money spent by environmental groups and so on, the whole package of money that's been spent to take these dams out or do the process.
Well, it's the taxpayer money and ratepayer money that would be the focus of environmentals want to waste their money, but they're using it to attack us, and that's the bad part. And so if it's $800 million, then there needs to be accountability, and the people of Oregon and California need to see that's coming out of their hide, that extra $350 million that already came out of the poor ratepayers, Pacific Corp on that side, and then the bond in California. Go ahead.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention is that with regard to the lands which are under the water, we're under the water, no longer under the water, in a study done in 1955 in conjunction with the development of the Klamath Compact, the local expert at that time, Frank Lathrop, had estimated that all of those lands that were put in trust were actually state sovereign lands, which made it different than any other project in the country when that was formed. They were state sovereign lands that were put in there in trust for the federal government to carry out the project. And I think that adds a different nuance to the whole thing. I'll leave that to Ray and other people who are experts in that area. But I thought that was an interesting comment that was made back in 1955 during the congressional hearings that were held in Washington, D.C. as part of the package to get the Klamath Compact approved.
Whatever that really means, where the rubber hits the road, I guess, need some legal interpretation of what you do with that. I don't know what to tell you. With that sovereign land nuance you mentioned there. So, okay. Chrissy, were you had something else you wanted to express there?
Yeah,
Okay, Ray has that.
before I give this over, can you reiterate what we talked about with FEMA and the floodplain earlier today? About them declaring a new floodplain, but not 2 to 3 years after the dams are actually out.
Why don't you do it? I'm a little fried up here right now, so.
Okay. There is
Thank you.
Chrissy wanted me to let everybody else know this, don't know this. At the end of this process, FEMA will re-describe floodplain.
Oh, yeah.
And that'll affect everything downriver of the dams. If you remember in the original EIS back in 2012, there was a great number of remedies for homes along the river to either raise them, put dikes around them, do those kinds of things because of the increase in floodplain. None of that's happening. It's probably never going to happen. But what FEMA will do is 2 to 3 years after dam removal, when they see what the river does, and that's what their quote was, then they will re-describe where the floodplain is. And once they do that, the county will be forced then to rezone floodplain. So they're going to lay that off on us as the bad guys, is what's going to happen.
And that means when that floodplain's adjusted, if you have a mortgage or need a mortgage, which a lot of people are going through right now, you're going to play heck for getting it.
Your insurance is going to be.
And all of a sudden, you're in a jurisdictional wetland.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to rebuild your home because of a fire.
Right.
Yeah, the same you're seeing with rebuild on, as
Yeah.
he's saying, fire insurance, you'll have flood insurance, you won't be able, unless they come build this wall for you or raise your house.
Yeah, and what I was briefing Doug on was with the McKinney fire, we're already having problems with zoning and permitting to rebuild homes down there because FEMA hasn't actually declared where the floodplain's going to be. So I got one right here. She's been waiting a long time.
Thank you. Hi, Congressman Lamafa. You mentioned two things earlier. You mentioned petroleum and nuclear power plants. As we've gone along, there has been no restitution for the people. First, it was the spotted owls. Then they knew that they were coming after water for the ranchers. And so we know with petroleum, it takes a lot of dead bodies, which we have dead fish, animals, etc., and ancient fossils. And it also takes zooplankton and algae, which we have as well. So when, will there be a nuclear plant put in here? And what will that do to the constituents that are close to it? And then also, will there be any restitution for the people that live in that area? And will there be any capital coming off of petroleum that will come in the future?
I don't quite follow restitution for what?
Any, just restitution for the people who have lost their homes and wells. They're not seeing it now.
This is something we'll have to be wrestling with whatever's left of KRC by the time, and FERC, who has allowed this. And is there a FEMA aspect like we're talking about with the flooding? Will FEMA feel responsible in conjunction for helping make people flood safe there and insurable? Now, you're delving more into the power generation. We've lost hydropower is gone, so that value is lost, and those power plants were a major contributor to the tax-paid coffers of this county as well. Your supervisors could tell better than I what that value is, but 3 power plants on the California side and the one on the Oregon side provided a good amount of value. That's all lost. Right. And so Pacificor is not going to feel. They've washed their hands. They've gotten the golden parachute or the golden ejection seat, whatever it is. They're out of here. So what entities, and this is where myself and Mr. Walden from the Oregon side have been able in the past to line up some amount of money for, on the ag side for the Klamath Basin, but also for restitution, a little bit of restitution around here, a $20 million pot that they've dangled in front of us in the past. It's going to take a lot more than that going forward. Will they be willing to do it? A lot of it depends on the makeup of Congress on this, as the whole KRC was created to bypass Congress and the federal input on this thing happening to begin with. They were able to settle it amongst the Pacificor entity and locals, and then finally FERC demanded that it be the state of California and state of Oregon backing it up. So the restitution is going to have to come from perhaps some, as a result of these regulators that allowed this to happen. Go ahead, what's your follow-up thought?
Well, I know everybody's working really hard on it, and I know this is something along the lines. However, those are things that are coming up. It's kind of we've gotten some really good ideas on what we'd be doing with FERC here right now from our conversation today, and some help firm up the ground on what we should be doing with FERC after tonight's meeting as well. And so basically, I thought of this clip a minute ago. Okay, you guys, what the FERC, right? You guys need to be doing a lot more to help around here, because it was your approval that allowed KRC to have no plan, basically no plan, or a fake plan to get where we are right now. So they should be bearing a responsibility to backfill. And since it was the state of California and state of Oregon that were all happy as clams to do it, then the federal government somehow needs to leverage them to say, okay, guys, you're the line of credit. You have not produced for the people of Siskiyou County, and I think maybe to an extent Modoc County, and on the Oregon counties up there as well. Everybody needs to bring their assessment forward. It's kind of like post-fire. What did you lose, And so that's where we're talking the wells. That's where we're talking about the shoring up for flood control. And I don't know what you would even do about electricity rates. Is there going to be some kind of a factor there where electricity could be set at a certain rate cost, with subject to normal inflation, but instead of hyper expensive electricity coming from somewhere else, because, the hydropower, especially with 60, 80, 100-year-old dams and infrastructure, is cheap compared to anything else you could replace that with. They say, oh, we'll replace it with wind and solar from somewhere else. That's terrifically expensive. The solar panels, as I mentioned, firsthand experience, 11 to 13 years, we're already seeing a drop of efficiency. By the time they're 20 or 25, you'd probably be jerking them out and sending them to the dump. And you're seeing that with the windmills. How many of them are they hauling off? What's the lifespan on one of those? They seem to be only a few years. And if you ever looked at the illustration of what it takes to build the windmill, like the 300-foot diameter, they're talking 600-foot diameter ones. They're going to need to have air traffic routed around them, and in a wooded area, like they're talking about this Hatchet area there in eastern Shasta County, where they want to do even more of it, it's going to hamper firefighting ability for aircraft to be able to fly particular patterns if those are there. So, to me, the answer is not going to be those. So, I'm not going to say, hey, we're going to get a nuclear power plant in Siskiyou County anytime soon, but maybe you should be open to the idea, because these small modular reactors are pretty darn efficient and they make cheap power once you get the thing permitted and built. What was that?
What about petroleum?
Petroleum?
That's basically in the making right now.
I don't know what to say about petroleum other than we need to be exploring for it in wherever the reserves are thought to be or had, tapping into it in this country. Yes, even in national parks where they can do things ecologically effectively. We shouldn't be scared of that because it's a small footprint. We're talking like Anwar, again, but they can do everything they want on 10,000 acres out of either 1.3 million or 3 million, however big that thing is. And petroleum is going to be part of our lives for a long time, unless we want to be hermits living in caves, eating gathered berries and things like that. Okay?
Thank you.
And there's people that want us to be that. I ain't one of them.
Hi, Mr. Malafa.
Hi.
So you mentioned a couple times tonight that the dam's coming down, it's not backed by science, and that's part of an agenda. And considering, the consequences it's had on the people living around it, what are you suggesting is the purpose of why people are wanting to take the dams down?
What is say the last part a little louder?
What's the purpose? What's this driving push to take all these dams down? Like you said, around the West Coast, Shasta Lake's next. Why?
Well, ostensibly, the purpose was to create a fish flow out of the Klamath and have it go back to what pre-1910 of what it looked like, more or less. But I'd tell you, with what they have in their own plans, it has not gone back to what pre-1910 or whenever the first project was done, because they've altered the river from what it would have been beforehand with moving those reefs. They're part of that. There's these reef barriers that have been documented by Geological Service and others in the past that would show that the river has come over, basically like waterfalls there that are at least 30 or more feet high, that are not going to be having great big fish passage. So when they say that by tearing out the dams, it will restore 400 miles of habitat, well, linearly from the lake to the ocean, I think, what's the number, about 180 miles, 170?
250. 250.
Oh, 250, a little more, okay. So that's not 400 miles. So they're trying to count every tributary as that. So the numbers are grand, but at the end of the day, the whole purpose ostensibly was about salmon populations. So, well, there isn't going to be any for right now after this. And as was a previous conversation, if the salmon are divided into 3 cohorts, 3 classes or 3 pools, and you've wiped out 2 of them during this period, can the third one sustain and bring it back? And then, what we're discussing is that frequently that isn't enough of a cohort or a number to restore an entire species. So with what they've wiped out here, I guess now that it's irreversible, we're going to see what happens. Did they gain a salmon increase a population on this river and on this system. Well, there's also some flaws in the thinking that the lake itself is not the ideal lake, water temperature, water quality for a river to sustain this type of Pacific salmon. Now, where it's more abundant and thriving more northern rivers in Oregon, Washington, maybe up into Canada, they got much colder water. They have much higher flows. This river always struggles to have a big amount of flow anyway. And so part of what humankind has built there in the dams has made actually more flexibility, more possibilities with how water can be managed, and even to the benefit of fish in the past when they had water stocked up. Hey, can we do a quick release here to get another flushing flow or this, that, because of the disease that's in the river, the Shasta Sea or whatever it's called. And then even for things such as a boat dance that they were wanting to do down farther, releasing extra water for that. Well, that wasn't possible without that infrastructure. As well, with the project that was being developed, they added, I think, about 6 more feet of lake capacity because of the Link River Dam. And so it's a really big flat lake. That added a tremendous amount of water supply that didn't even exist before mankind's intervention there. So between that and some of the channels they rerouted there, the lake and the river had much more water than it ever would have had before mankind built these systems. The water would be lost into these basins there that would come out of the lake and evaporate and be gone. They didn't have the way to direct water down the river, so you would have had the additional 6 feet with hundreds of thousands of acre feet there, plus all the other water of the pre-lake, the pre-add lake, that wouldn't even have made it into the river. So it actually made flexibility. It made it where water managers and fish managers would have more options other than that the dams are there. But they never acknowledged that the infrastructure that people build, whether it's that, Lake Oroville, Lake Shasta, all the others that are these terrible passage problems that store all these millions of acre feet of water so that we have the ability to release water year round for every fish population that they want. And now even the added luxury, I will call it, of being able to release for temperature. Lake Shasta is being required because of some not passed by law, by a mandate, to keep more water in the lake longer. And so they were making normal deliveries to agriculture and people's needs are being put on hold in the early spring. And so more normal water deliveries would be promised to agriculture to say, hey, we'll March, April, May, we'll send this amount down to the Sacramento Valley and San Joaquin Valley. They weren't making that promise anymore. They were holding back several 100,000 acre feet additionally because they want the lake to be deeper so that the water on the bottom and the lower regions stays colder longer. And so now that water that used to be used by people can't be used anymore because they want to have a colder water pool so that the water in September and October they want to release for the fall run or winter run or whichever the hell run it is 1 degree colder than it would have been without that. For 1 degree, you've just now put hundreds of thousands of acres of agriculture out of business and so many municipal water needs. And so the number I mentioned, they want to ratchet people down to 42 gallons per day per household, which sounds like a luxury over there in Copco area and stuff. Now, I'm not joking, I don't mean that, but to normal use, I think a normal household likes to use about 80 gallons per person by the time you run a dishwasher or a washer and dryer, shower, maybe your yard. I don't know how they count for yards. So the whole thing boils back down to they're doing all this destruction till they think they're helping a fish on a warm, shallow lake on a river that is a warm river, not comparable to the farther north Oregon, Washington, Canada rivers that are actually ideal for this type of salmon and the conditions for them to be. It's a marginal river for salmon. During the best years, yeah, it probably does all right, but they're always saying the population's way down. Like, well, what was the highest ever? We don't seem to have good data on that. We just have a force feed and bullying and bulldozing by government to just get this done. And that's what happened. So that's my opinion on that. Does that help? Thank you.
Oh, I just wanted to bring up something about flood insurance. I think we pay around $800 a year through FEMA because we're not really in the floodplain. KRRC has estimated that we're going to have 4 feet of water in our house at the 100-year floodplain now. And our insurance agent estimate that our insurance will go up to $10,000 to $12,000 per year when FEMA rezones it. So, I'm hoping that someday in the future there's going to be something to help us out on that.
All right, that's where what the FERC needs to be responsible here. And because their little entity KRC, when they disappear from their Berkeley office or whatever in time, like everybody else is disappearing, that'll I don't know how much we can beat KRC over a period of time or what have you, and then the 2 states that were so happy to jump in for their taxpayers' behalf behind this to make that right. Now, if you're going to try and stay in your home, then maybe there's a system of a dike or whatever. Like, take the whole town of, in the county of Tehama, there's a city of Tehama right along the Sacramento River. Some years ago, they couldn't decide how wild the river is going to be and what it might do to overflow its rudimentary banks there. So they just instead raised the town. So it's right just west of Las Molinas there on the back road. Drive through there sometime and see what they did. They took a bunch of the houses that wanted to participate and built them up on cinder blocks and raised the houses 6, 7, 8 feet so that should the river, and then the bottom part is just going to be a garage or something. If it got wet, it wouldn't kill anybody. That's what they did there. Not that that's good, but that's just something that happened. But I don't recommend that in your neighborhood. I recommend that they didn't do this to begin with, but here we are. So they, the responsible parties that thought this was all so great because we're going to have a salmon population in a marginal river with a marginal lake is going to be just the be all end all. Well, then come up and pay for it.
My question is about insurance. Lots of people have lost their insurance because of the fires that are in California, terrible. And every time I call, I get a runaround. I get, talk to your elected officials in the House and in the Senate because they are the ones that turn a blind eye because the insurance give contributions to your guys' campaigns. We need that stopped. We need insurance to come to heal. It is we the people, and we need them to honor. When we pay into insurance all this years, and then a fire happens, that's not our fault. And then they say, no, you don't get anything. And some of these renters that have rented, like in Happy Camp, they were paying renter insurance, but they still didn't receive $1 because all they were renters. And, the insurance companies do this bankrupt stuff. And it sounds like in 5 minutes, the flood insurance people that have flood insurance, they're not going to have that either. We need you to do something about that and not just take their money and let them turn a blind eye anymore.
Okay. All right. I'm not a big money taker of any of these entities, and so, but that's not something I keep track of, and it's not my focus. No matter who contributes to me, doesn't sway my feelings about whatever the subject is. So let's talk about insurability, and let's first talk about the fire side of it. So after the Camp Fire, that's the one in Paradise, where 85 people lost their lives and 90% of the town was burned down. There was many insurance companies that had carried different policies for the citizens there. Some of the smaller ones, because they'd been going years and years of not having any big claims, making money on that and putting it in the pot that they pay out of. Well, with the massive amount of loss in Paradise and the surrounding towns, those people that were insured by that, those insurance companies soon ran out of money in the pot and went belly up. So that had to then be the responsibility taken over by FEMA and other entities to help people get out of that mess, as well as PG&E, the utility, that a lawsuit in Sacramento additionally helped many of those folks that were fire victims as well. And we're still wrestling with legislation on that right now that I hope to get done in September over on the Senate side to make it sure that money, that award is not subject to IRS taxation. You believe it? So insurability. Now, what can I do most directly? On the forest side, if we have managed forests, we manage them around our towns, we make fire breaks and ridge lines where forest fire can be much more easily controlled, and we have managed forests that they're not so densely populated by so many more trees than what is really sustainable. You've given yourself a chance to be much more fire safe and fire resistant in these communities, right? So
even in our towns,
yeah,
people are getting canceled left, right, and center, and they're not able to sell their home.
because the insurance companies are just pulling out of the whole state. They see California as a train wreck for a lot of reasons, and not just the direct risk we might be talking about, but also doing business in California. And so we have in this state, they created what's called an insurance commissioner about 1990 or so. So that would be an elected position instead of appointed one. I don't know if that's given us a good result or not, because it becomes much more political with the insurance commissioner trying to pose and preen for the public on that. So this current one, for a long time, resisted allowing insurance companies to set rates that they felt was commensurate with risk. So rates were kept artificially low. I won't say they were low per se, but lower than what they thought they needed to do to be in business in California. California being a high-cost state to do everything. So when they see that point, that if you have a contracted insurance situation and the end comes up, they're saying, we can't make any money in this state, we're pulling out. We're going to first not renew insurance with people, and so they quit renewing. And then you got to go find somebody else. And then after a point, many of them just say, we're just going to withdraw doing business in the whole state. Partly because the risk is so high of fire, or they believe it is anyway, in these towns, in these areas, that they think that it's just going to be impossible to ever stay right side up for them, especially coupled with not being able to raise the rates to where they think they're going to make a living, right? So, now the congressman's saying he wants to see everybody's rates go up. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But there is a market for everything, and the market has to set. Insurance is a pool of risk that is looked at as people collectively managing this pool of risks with money that they place in there. So there's that pool that people that are a victim of whatever that risk is can draw upon that. Hopefully not everybody, 100% of the people in the pool all have a claim at the same time. Otherwise it all blows up, kind of like some of the small companies in Paradise we're talking about. So what is insurance for? It's about, again, a collective group of people managing risk, and 1 in 100 has to make a claim, and everybody else says, well, I'm glad they're getting their part taken care of. I'm sure glad it wasn't me that had to make the claim. Does that make any sense? So
It's the same thing Newsom said, but it's a roundabout. It doesn't tell me that, I'll make a bill that says they have to hold up their apartment. I'll make a bill that says they're going to do their job in good faith.
I'm trying to sort that out. Make a bill to make them hold up their end. Now, in a free enterprise system, I can't make a law, nor will I, to say you have to do business in this place. You have to lose money on providing insurance. Then that might as well be the government doing it. That sounds like a government entity that would do that, not a private insurance company, because what entity goes into any situation guaranteed to lose money? You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't go to your 9-to-5 job each day and say, well, I'm going to come home with less money than what I came with due to my commute and lunch and all that stuff. Insurance isn't going to write insurance in a state where they can't make a profit. I know profit's a dirty word for a lot of people, and that's, I don't want them to make an exorbitant profit and take advantage of people, but they have to make a living. That's the whole idea. If they aren't there to be able to offer insurance, then nobody has the benefit of insurance. But they have to make a living. So I can't make a law that says, ABC Insurance Company, you have to come into this state and you have to provide everybody in X county with insurance at a particular rate that you lose money at. That's a form of tyranny that I can't be part of.
No, I didn't mean it like that.
I didn't think you did, but I guess I'm being a little over in order. Go ahead. What's your?
What I mean is, they take this from satellites and stuff, and they take all this information, and then they just, on an average, say you're in a fire zone. My house is not in a fire zone at all. But my insurance is, I might lose it tomorrow, and then what?
It's bad, and you make that's a great point that I've lamented myself. We have to figure out a way to get them to look at what is really the risk of where the insured person is. Now, take Paradise once again, or take Greenville. Everything's already burned down around Greenville and Paradise, right? And once they've removed all those dead trees that are standing there, and they have a clear zone around it, then the fire risk is going to be marginal compared to what it was before the fire. Why can't they come write insurance in Paradise and Greenville and places like that? Or instead of taking a whole blanket zip code saying it's all bad, saying like, well, send some people out and use their brain a little bit and say, let's look at the risk of what this is here. Now, once a fire gets going in a town and rages like it did, it burned almost all of Greenville, almost out of Paradise. So you're also looking at what does the individual home look like? What is their roof material made of? What is the siding made of? What is their vent system in there? Because embers can get sucked into the, I've known people that they've survived the fire, but embers later on got into their vent and in the attic after the fire had gone past. They thought they were good and burned their house down. So anyway, it comes down to building fire resilient homes in any area, but especially ones that are fire prone. So if there's a rebuild or a remodel, use those materials. All those things are going to factor in as to what the risk is. And yes, it's reasonable to say I should be able to get insured if my house is built right and the neighborhood has the resilience of not being fire prone from trees and forests nearby, and all the houses around me pretty much are that way, that should be insurable. Now, can I make a law that says you have to come insure? I can't force people to be in business. But California has a backup insurance called the FAIR Plan, which most people call it the unfair plan because it's so horrifically expensive. I get that. So what I think we need to figure out is how thank you. Not legislatively, but get their attention and say, hey, we need you guys to come back after and reassess what the risk really is in a neighborhood. Why can't you figure out how to risk assess on a more case by case or neighborhood by neighborhood instead of a broad zip code or a region, because that's lazy. But when you come back to California, there's still bigger problems with the other aspects we're talking about with the insurance commissioner that doesn't allow them to have the autonomy to decide, I'm going to offer insurance at this rate. Does the customer want it or not? And is there someone else willing to do that? Because a smart insurance company is going to come in and say, hey, you know what? We're looking at Greenville and Paradise and see, this looks like a low risk area. And people by code are required to build their houses back with resistant materials and fire safe, and not no shrubs growing against the edge of the house. All that stuff's bad. When they're doing all the right things, and the town is when Paradise is building back that way, that should be a very insurable town. And so I think maybe hopefully a nice prod would say, hey, come back and look at this, and come back and look at this market. Can government somehow incentivize them to do that? That's something we could talk about, But every time you say the magic word incentive, that means taxpayer dollars. So we'd have that debate of, are we going to use taxpayer dollars to incentivize an insurance company to come back and do this? I don't know. That's something that we haven't really talked extensively about. That's something I just right off the cuff here. But we should be finding a way to encourage them to come back into these low risk. I wouldn't tell anybody you have to do it in a high risk zone. That's back on us and government, especially forestry, to do the things that are going to start lowering those probabilities, those odds of fire around Shingletown, for example, or any town that's adjacent to a problem forest. And the park fire came right up to in Tehama County, town called Manton. We used to have a nice apple festival there, and then a couple leaps and bounds directly north was the town of Shingletown, which it's really forested there. And I've sweated that town plus another one called Westwood over here for a long time as to what would happen if fire. And fire came close to Westwood in the Dixie fire. It came really close to Chester coming down the west side of that, and it devoured Greenville. And there's a town right near Greenville called Canyon Dam that I was actually there 5 minutes before its demise with CAL FIRE. Unbelievable how that is, So to get insurance, California has to be friendlier towards that kind of business too. That's a component. The risk we talked about. I hope that all makes sense. And so you gotta, at the state level, they have to be willing to figure out the economics of it too. The economics is the forestry. The economics is the insurance company feeling like it's a friendly enough place to do business in. That's a long answer, but I hope that's where my mind is on that. And I would like to, when you've declared a fire safe, when you can see areas fire safe, get them to come back. And I don't know how you cattle prod them to do that, but you got to find a way. I won't make a law saying you have to, but certainly we ought to get them to the table and say, maybe there's other benefits that they enjoy that government does with them, and say, you know what, maybe we won't be as inclined to do this with you, the thing you like, if you were not willing to come back. That's a good old coercion there. My Hawaiian colleague, Jill Tokuda there, she has Lahaina, which set the higher record for number of lives lost in a fire at Lahaina there, and we went and visited that too. They have a unique set of problems with how that came out. So, but it comes down to insurability needs to be realistic to anybody that would be an entrepreneur in good faith and say, yes, this is insurable, we can do business here. Thanks.
So earlier you had mentioned China and the economy, and I had kind of a follow-up question on that. I understand the economy is a top concern for your voting base. However, with the continued economic decoupling from the second largest economy in the world being China, I was curious how you intend on helping to keep prices in California.
Speak a little slower, please. I have to.
Yeah, so we're continuing to decouple from the second largest economy in the world being China. Mm-hmm. And I was curious how you intended on keeping prices in California competitive.
They aren't competitive now, are they?
Well, it sure doesn't seem like it, sir.
That's me being a wise guy. You're fine. Decoupling from China is not going to make things the cheapest, but we've already lived what cheapest has gotten us, haven't we? Reliability of supply chain, or the reliability that could really happen if they decide to cut us off. And quality, quality is a factor too. Talk to anybody that uses some of these components. Frequently I'm at auto repair, we have a whole fleet of stuff for our ranch here, and I don't buy all brand new stuff, although that's harder to fix the brand new stuff. With some slightest glitch, forget about it. You got to get a guy with a computer. So I like taking my chances with my 74 pickup there and rattle around in that. But that all said, we got to get our stuff worked on. And these guys say, for me to install a part, I have to buy 3 of them until I get one that holds up, because this garbage that they're having to import, because the cheapest stuff you can get is from China. Look at, for hot rodders, there's a lot, I read a lot when on my off time about hot rodding and engines and stuff like that. Anybody that does that stuff, have you been following what it takes to keep camshafts in V8s and lifters? It seems like they start them up, they run them for 10 minutes, and they're grinding up because the quality of the metal, the alloy, the metallurgy is just not holding up, because they're getting this cheap stuff from over there. The other components for engines, for anything else. Everything's throwaway. It drives me crazy. You got a little appliance, a little vacuum cleaner or something glitched out. Like, well, let's take it apart. You can't get, my shop, the floor jacks. Can you get the parts to change the seal in the little hydraulic ram so you can lift your car up and change the tires? You can't get the frickety frackin' parts. So you throw away this, 100-pound lift because you can't get a
How do you
couple-
intend on solving that?
How do I solve it?
Yes, sir. I understand that's a big question, but
Thank you for focusing me again here. It's been a day here. Hey, we're in overtime, aren't we? We're in overtime. It really comes down to what kind of atmosphere are we going to have for doing business in California, the U.S., to produce these things here. How would we shape that? Don't have these criminal regulations that make everybody look like they're accused of something simply by trying to do business. The horrendous amount of permitting process it takes to get a plant built or up your production, the slightest things, you got to do a NEPA on that. You got to do a NEPA after a fire to go out and salvage timber. And if you want to salvage timber and get some kind of return or value out of it, you need to get out of there. You need to get it out of there within a year, less hopefully. So the NEPA process sometimes takes a year and a half. We had a prime example of that of one over on the coast on a 400,000 acre fire. They wanted to go in and do only 7,000 acres of just a little sub piece, less than 2% of that whole fire. They fought for a year and a half to get a permit to do that. And somebody sued, some coastal environmental entity sued, saying you didn't study for the snail darter. You studied for all this other stuff, but you didn't take account like, well, how will this critter be affected by you cutting down dead trees and planting new trees back, which is really stupid. But they took it to a 3-judge panel down in the San Francisco area. 2 to 3 judges said, yeah, you should have studied for the snail darter. That's not the actual species. That's just what I make up. So the problem is litigation. The regulation for doing a NEPA for everything makes it uncompetitive to be here. A lot of other things, the taxation, there's proposals for taxation that are coming during this election cycle, which I won't be politicizing any. It's just going to shut down the ability to do stuff. I'm disappointed to see John Deere locating, or at least potentially locating, a plant in Mexico. John Deere, for crying out loud, tractors made in the Midwest. I don't really want to buy their product as much anymore, Plus, it's so horrendously expensive, and price of rice is in the toilet. But I ain't complaining. A lot of people have it worse than me. So it really comes down to the atmosphere we need to create here. Low-cost energy. Our energy is higher cost than it's been ever proportionately. We have all the energy, small nuclear reactors, cheap electricity, natural gas. Because of the miracle of hydraulic fracturing, natural gas price dropped tremendously, and a bunch of natural gas plants got built. European concerns wanted to come to this country and locate production here for automobiles or whatever. Thanks for coming, folks. We went way into overtime here, but I'll keep going until somebody wants to not hear no
Congressman
more.
Lafayette, what's
God bless
not
you.
changing?
And keep hanging in there. We're going to work on this
Keep
FERC deal, okay? Thank you. So we got to make the incentive to be here on cost, energy, crazy everything, and bring the jobs here. And then it won't be quite as cheap as what you can get in China, but when your neighbor's employed, there's a value to your community to that. The dollars are now coming back to your county, your state, your federal government instead of all this borrowed money. So the wins are there long term. So quit buying so much garbage from China, but we have to make it here so we have the choice not to buy it. It's really hard to buy things. I go to the tool store. It's really hard to find the stuff. I do look for it, at least to an extent, until I give up, but there you go. Thanks.
Mr. LaMafia, thank you for coming to YREKA this evening. My name is Pamela Rocha, and I'm a child care provider in Siskiyou County. Been doing it for the last 13 years, and I'm afraid I'm not going to have a job soon.
What?
Between TK and
I'm sorry. It's just echoey enough, and my ears ain't the best. To
right here.
hold it really close, perpendicular.
Between
and
TK
speak
and-
a little more slowly, please. Thank you.
Between the transitional kindergarten, or TK, and pre-K, I'm losing all of my clientele. Half of my subsidy parents are
Why are you losing them? Why?
to the schools because it's free.
Because you're a private.
Yes, because
Okay.
I'm considered a private entity,
Okay,
even though I
okay.
take subsidy. I take subsidy clients like from Siskiyou Child Care and tribal subsidy payments. I only have 3 private pay parents on my roster. All of the parents can't afford to go to work because they can't afford to pay me. So how are we going to fix our economy when we don't have somebody to watch these children, our future leaders?
That gets into a whole nother debate about 2-parent families and that, which, I can't fix here, but, and that doesn't fix the problem, as you're saying. But I guess it kind of roots back to the last question. A strong economy makes a lot more things possible, people getting a better wage, a better salary or whatever, and you have more one parent working staying in the home, and one parent out on the job, which is harder and harder to do. And you wonder how much is being manipulated to make it where it has to be 2 people doing 2 jobs, killing themselves, and they don't have enough time to pay attention to their kids and all that stuff. And so that gets into a societal root there. That's
yes. And the other issue that arises is the regional market rate has not changed since 2022.
But what hasn't?
The regional market rate that providers are being paid has not changed since 2022.
And what entity sets that and pays
The
that?
state, I charge $800 a month for an infant. When you break it down to a 10-hour day, that's $40 a day or $4 an hour. Out of that, I have to pay my assistant, I have to pay insurance, I have to pay for food, curriculum, to keep my own power on, and I'm losing my clientele to the schools.
Because they can't
it's
afford
free.
it anymore. Yeah.
And it should be the parent's choice. They should not have to go with what is free. Would you want your 2-year-old going to a school and being told to sit down, be quiet, you don't get recess today? They should be out playing and enjoying themselves and running free.
What do you want me to do?
Be our voice. Be my voice.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying that my job is better than somebody that works.
No,
at
but what you
McDonald's.
do is important to you and the
But
people,
somebody
your
at
clients.
McDonald's
Yes.
makes more money than I do. So should I just take all the kids up there to go play in the playground up there? They make $22 an hour. I make $4.
I know you're not making a killing living on caviar dreams and champagne, whatever. That I know you're not. And
But I love my job, and I would
yeah.
love for you to come see
I can tell you do.
the heart that my staff and I put into our business. And come read a book with the kids.
I can only tell you that the ills of, in general, we've been talking about to trickle to you. If people can't afford things, they have to start cutting things loose. Things that are seen as maybe luxuries, no vacations, no jewelry, no whatever. Those generally go first. And then things like, well, what else do I do to cut? I don't need to go to the restaurant anymore, this and that. And then they start looking at that and say, well, I guess I can get my kids can be somewhere else for free in a public situation versus that. I understand. And I can't legislate everything, but I can work on the bigger picture. How do we have a strong economy? How do we give people have more choices? How do we have the cost of everything? We're going to go find dinner somewhere after this, and I'm not going to be happy because it cost me $16 to get a hamburger and fries and a shake. That's too much money. But I don't blame the poor restaurant guy or gal because they have to charge it too. Because now the state, the lizard man, made it $20 an hour for minimum wage. $20. No, my workers on my farm, and they're good guys, and I want to pay them well. But when that's the floor for flipping a hamburger, which is a good, honorable job, good entry-level job, nothing wrong with it. That means everybody else's wages have to be better than that by some number to look like, well, heck, I could be just over here doing that instead of, busting my tail for this or that or the other. Okay. So that distorts things when government comes in and starts setting prices on stuff. You get paid what?
In hugs and kisses. I don't have a paycheck, but all of mine goes to my staff.
Yeah, yeah. And I won't ask what you're paying, it's not my business, but I'm sure the people on that end don't feel like they're probably not griping at you, but they're probably feel like, hey, they aren't getting that far ahead in this economy. It's the things that we really can attack as government are the cost of doing business. Energy is one main component. If we can get our energy costs down, because energy drives everything. The lights in this room, thank you for the high school for donating them to us tonight. Maybe we should cut you a few bucks for that or something, but the energy on my farm, the energy in the mill, energy for the school bus, energy for everything is much higher than it needs to be. And so energy goes into the fertilizer I buy, and it goes into the tractor to till the land, and the harvester, and then the truck that hauls it to the dryer, and the dryer then hauls it to the mill, and then the mill that puts it in a bag and sends it to your shelf. Those costs are now everywhere because of higher energy costs, because of some of the dumb policies that have been happening. And on top of that, inflation is also driven by money supply. When the federal government is out there spending way more than it takes in time and time and time again, the COVID era, bunch of money, $6 trillion, okay? Bunch of it not really authorized by Congress. You know, we went for the first round there, and after that, it kind of had its own momentum. And then such things such as the Infrastructure Act, which I voted against. I love infrastructure, but when 90% of the bill isn't actual infrastructure, such as highways and levees and roads and dams and things like that, but other things that aren't really that, they should be in their own category that we debate separately, that's not real. And that was a couple $2 trillion right there, maybe three, I can't remember the number right now. Then another one, this is really the funny one called the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay? Inflation reduction by the federal government borrowing and spending money that doesn't exist to go do a bunch of projects or a bunch of things or a bunch of climate change, whatever, that they think is important because they have power right now. All that stuff makes everything cost more money, because when there's too much money flying around, like during the COVID era, for example, all these people are getting these checks, $600, $750, $1,200 checks, or credit cards. The state sent credit cards out with the golden bear on it. And all of a sudden you got people that are sitting at home because they're not allowed to go to work and produce. All that stuff that's produced had to be imported or brought by somewhere else. Anyway, it's this so-called free money that had to come from the taxpayers' debt eventually. And all of a sudden now you had a whole bunch of money chasing not very much stuff. Wood, for example. Remember when lumber quadrupled in price for a while there? Because everybody was going down to Home Depot and buying stuff and building their deck or something, or fixing something, which is all good, except they had time to do all this honeydews at home. And so now you got a lot of money that wasn't earned or wasn't made chasing few products because nobody's allowed to work to make that per se. So inflation kills you. Government spending drives inflation. Energy, which is so important as a component to everything that we make and do and produce and transport ourselves to and from to go get. Those are the big drivers. If we're getting a handle on those, we will get back to something. We'll never get back to where we were. But we'll get back to something down. Other states, just travel to other states and see the cost of fuel. It's in the low twos. Why are we such suckers here that has to be, we feel happy if we don't see 4 at the beginning. If it's $3.99, like, ooh, we got a break.
Personally feel that as Congress, we could get more working parents back to work, and they had a provider or a teacher they could trust with their children. We'd have more productivity and more people working.
Yeah.
Without providers, we're not going to fix the economy.
You're right. And you touched on something that's important too. Getting back to school where there's trust. Now, this is going to comes into maybe a moral area, but the stuff that they're allowing into our schools and these young minds, and you'll hear it said like, oh, they want to ban books. That's just an easy, broad thing to say about somebody that was trying to hold standards for what actually is the material that's in the library or even the textbooks. When we're talking, why is there this big push to coerce kids into the sexualization of their young minds and this drag queen stuff in libraries. What is the big push for all this for? Why is this happening? You know, and that makes parents not be able to trust their school system. And for good reason. And so they show up to the school board meetings like they never have before, and they're called all sorts of bad names for having themselves heard on what is going on with their kids' curriculum. I mean, that's all upside down. And talk about trust. So more and more people are going to want to be coming to a private situation and hope to have that option. But they're having a harder time affording that. And certainly down in Sacramento, they don't want that to happen. The Teachers Association down there, they hate all that. They want it to be forced there so they can control it, you know? And it's wrong. But in Sacramento, the politics is really catering to that right now. In D.C., there's more and more conversation about devolving more of that back to local levels. Now, giving it back to the state of California is probably not a good idea. But most of the other 49 states, let the dollars stay there. Let the emphasis stay there. So, folks, it's getting to be 9 o'clock here. The time flies, and I don't want to cut you short, but didn't we start at 6? Yeah, usually we do 90 minutes on these, and I'm happy to go 2 hours. But check out our materials we have here. I don't know if these are passed out in the beginning, but grab one of these if you wish, and fill out what you think your areas of interest are and things you would like us to respond to post this event here. And this one still has, see, we keep using our same stuff over again, but this one still has an Orville sticker on it. We need to put the Chico sticker on it, but Reading and DC offices are still accurate on here. So I'm cheap, we don't throw away the letterhead and stuff, but fill one of these out if you wish. Send that with us tonight if you want. Fill it out fast or send it on later. And we'd like to have you on our email list. Again, we're not going to sell you stuff. It's not going to be campaign, none of that nonsense, because we're not allowed to, thankfully, by the law to campaign with our official stuff. If you want to show that to people there a little bit. But anyway. Yes, okay. I will lead that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Or someone want to do that? Yeah. Okay, you have an individual wants to. Okay. Well, let me say thank you. We appreciate it. We're going to close our night in prayer and then say so long. Thank you.
I just think we all ought to stand up and give Doug a great big congratulations. He has done more for us than any other person that we know except God Almighty. And so I think we need to thank God for Doug and what he has done. And, 3 hours at a town hall is incredible. And so let's just ask God to bless America. Dear God, we are so thankful that we live right here in Siskiyou County and we have God's ear. He listens to us. Are we praying and seeking God and asking Him for changes and fundamental situations? Dear God, we need to get back to the roots of our raising and pay attention to what's right. People love each other. They should, and rather be crooks and come in and try to take over. Evil is still evil, and we need to recognize it when we see it. And we are just so thankful that you folks chose to come and spend the evening here and give an ear to what Doug has and the problems he has encountered. Dear Lord, we do not know what's all on his heart, but we do know that he cares for Siskiyou County and each and every one of us. Dear God, we ask him, God, to bless him richly, his family, his staff, and this area. And dear God, our whole leadership of our United States of America needs to get on their knees and praise God that they even have a job. Dear Lord, it is wonderful, but when we hear that the people at Copco don't even have water, dear Lord, that is just not good. And so, dear Lord, we're just asking you to empower us to be prayer warriors and to seek your face and to turn from our wicked ways. Then the Lord can heal our land. And dear Lord, we need that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. God bless you. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. And the great people of this county, you have our hearts. You are us. We are you. Thank you so much for spending all the time with us tonight. God bless you all.
Yeah, I have one question.